Chapter 1202. Originally, Bai Xiaowen had thought about using gentle means to communicate with the Gongsun family and use their power to track down the clues of the dragon-patterned golden box. However, Bai Xiaowen rejected this idea. The Gongsun family was still too much of a hindrance. They were naturally wary of the Yuan family, which could easily hinder Bai Xiaowen's plan. After understanding the situation, Bai Xiaowen found that Gongsun Du didn't have a deep foundation in Liaodong. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen took this opportunity to kill Gongsun Du and then used the Yuan family as a shield. The Gongsun family, which didn't have a deep foundation, naturally collapsed. Even if he had the identity of the Yuzhou provincial governor, asking the Gongsun family to help him find clues was like scratching an itch through a boot. How could it be compared to now? Bai Xiaowen's decree could be carried out smoothly in Xiangping City. He could directly mobilize the government's power to investigate, which was more convenient and fast. Wang Lai's suggestion was accepted by Bai Xiaowen modestly. This senior official, who had been unsuccessful for half of his life, had a good impression of Bai Xiaowen. He had already seen him as a wise lord that he could rely on. Bai Xiaowen then asked Wang Lai to write a recruitment notice and put it up in the 4 counties of Liaodong. Wang Lai even personally recommended a famous scholar. "Young master, I have a friend called Fu Yuan from Beihai County. He is famous for his moral integrity." Later, the Yellow Turban bandits caused chaos in the Central Plains. Fu Yuan moved his family to Liaodong to avoid the disaster. "Young master, why don't you recruit him?" There was no imperial examination in the 3 Kingdoms era, and the 9-rank system was not born yet. They used the inspection system passed down from the Han Dynasty to select and appoint officials. Recommendation was the most basic way to appoint talents. For example, Sun Yu recommended the actor to Cao Cao, and then recommended Guojia. They were both put in important positions. Therefore, the scholars in the 3 Kingdoms era paid special attention to their reputation. Most of them regarded filial piety as more important than their lives. Filial piety was needless to say. For the sake of their friends, the famous scholars of the 3 Kingdoms were willing to spend a lot of money and even abandon their families and careers. Wang Lai was now valued by the wise lord. Recommending one's friend was a basic operation. Bai Xiaowen said, "I have also heard of Ryuan's great name, I wish I could meet him." Immediately he issued a warrant, ordering his men to bring gold and silk gifts to recruit Ryuan. Elder Wang is talented and virtuous. It's a waste of his talent to be an elder. I will report this to my father and ask you to take up the post of Xiangping governor. Before the appointment is made, you will temporarily manage the affairs of Xiangping. What do you think? Bai Xiaowen asked. Wang Lai did not decline, bowed and said, "I will not let you down." After appointing Wang Lai, Bai Xiaowen brought Yan Rou to inspect Xiangping's treasury. Gongsun Du had accumulated about 30,000 strings of gold, silver, grain, and cloth. With the generous help of his brother-in-law Zhenyan, Bai Xiaowen was a little disappointed with the loot from the Xiangping treasury. In his opinion, as the Marquis of Liaodong, Gongsun Du should have more than this, right? But that was the truth, and Bai Xiaowen could do nothing about it. The 4 counties of Liaodong were barren, and Gongsun Du had not occupied them for long. It was already good enough to have 30,000 strings of cash and grain. "General Yan." Bai Xiaowen pulled Yan Rou over and said in a low voice, "Next, the troops of Yuzhou headquarters will come." "Yes." Yan Rou was a little confused and could only nod. This was obvious. Since Gongsun Du was dead, the 4 counties of Liaodong would become the territory of the Yuan family. As the governor of Yuzhou, Bai Xiaowen was bound to mobilize the troops of Yuzhou, such as the 20,000 men under Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan, to occupy the cities of the 4 counties and replace Gongsun Du's troops and reorganize them. "Elder Zhao Rong must know that I took over Liaodong," Bai Xiaowen continued. "Yes." Yan Rou nodded again, still confused. Wasn't this a basic operation? Why did second young master say it so solemnly? Bai Xiaowen coughed and began to talk about the main point. This money and grain must be sent to the treasury of Yuzhou. Yes. Yen Rou quivered and cupped her fists. Rest assured, young master. I will not let you down. I will escort the 30,000 strings of cash and grain to the treasury of Yuzhou. Bai Xiaowen was a little speechless. Why are you in such a hurry? After coughing heavily, Bai Xiaowen said, Liaodong is barren, and the treasury cannot make ends meet. How can there be 30,000 strings of cash and grain? There are only 10,000 strings of cash. General Yen, don't talk nonsense. Yen Rou was stunned and then looked at Bai Xiaowen in disbelief. She understood a little bit. Did second young master Yuan want to take the extra 20,000 strings of cash for himself? No. Second young master Yuan wanted to use the money to train his own troops. Yen Rou recalled that Bai Xiaowen had picked out 600 valiant soldiers from his subordinates, and his heart immediately lit up. However, after thinking it through, Yen Rou was even more shocked. What did second young master Yuan mean by training his own troops? Did he think that the troops in Yuzhou were not good enough? Do you want an army that only listens to your command? Looking at Bai Xiaowen's half-smile, Yen Rou quickly came to her senses. Second young master Yuan is probably preparing for the competition for the throne. With Yen Rou's vision, it was already very smart of him to think of the competition for the throne. He did not know that Bai Xiaowen's ambition was much bigger than he imagined. The problem in front of Yen Rou now was only one word: which side to take. He had to make a choice now. To help second young master Yuan keep the secret, including the secret of pocketing 20,000 strings of cash and grain to train his troops, Yen Rou had to stand on second young master Yuan's side and become his confidant. Just as Yen Rou was hesitating, Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, General Yen, you worked hard in this battle. I can give you 2,000 strings of cash as a reward. How about it? What do you think? Yen Rou quickly made up his mind. Based on the courage and strength second young master Yuan showed in this battle, as well as his subsequent actions of appeasing the officials and sending letters to the 4 counties, he completely meets the standards of a wise lord in my heart. So, this 2,000 strings of cash means that he wants to recruit me. Since second young master Yuan wants to recruit me, this is a rare opportunity. Otherwise, how can I, a former subordinate of Lu Yu, make a name for myself? If I reject second young master Yuan, think about Gong Sundu's fate? After Yen Rou's crazy self-improvement, he felt that he understood. He immediately knelt down and kowtowed. From now on, young master Yuan, she will be my lord. I will definitely do my best for my lord. I will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. What kind of operation is this? Bai Xiaowen was slightly stunned. He only wanted Yen Rou to help cover up the amount of cash and grain so that he could fill his own pockets. For this, he did not hesitate to give Yen Rou a sum of money to keep his mouth shut. What the hell is Yen Rou taking the initiative to pledge allegiance to me? No matter how smart Bai Xiaowen was, he did not expect Yen Rou to self-improve. He fell into deep thought. Could it be that I have awakened some amazing attribute? From now on, when I shake my body and release my tyrannical aura, there will be subordinates who will kowtow to me. This is a treatment that only a few faction leaders like Cao Cao and Liu Bei deserve. However, Bai Xiaowen's reaction was still very fast. After pondering for 0.1 seconds, he put on a happy expression and helped Yen Rou up. Good, that's great. Yuan she is General Yen alone and defeated 3 armies. Chapter 1203. After Yen Rou expressed his loyalty, Bai Xiaowen quickly received a notification from the spiritual realm's rules. You have obtained the loyalty of Yen Rou, the battle-type leader of the 3 kingdoms. You can view Yen Rou's detailed information. Bai Xiaowen had used insight to scan Yen Rou before and did not find anything special. The main reason was that insight could only see his attributes and some of his skills. Now that he had the opportunity to view the detailed information for free, Bai Xiaowen casually clicked on it. When he clicked on it, Bai Xiaowen was a little surprised. Yen Rou actually had a special skill. Enemy of the other tribes, passive. When Yen Rou fights against enemies of the other tribes, non-Han Chinese, he and his direct subordinates will receive additional bonuses. All attributes of Yen Rou himself +10, all attributes of his direct subordinates +5, morale +5 every natural day. Bai Xiaowen could not help but wonder if this Yen Rou was also a famous figure in history. The anti-Hu hero? Bai Xiaowen inquired about the effect of morale. The spiritual realm's rules gave him the answer. When large armies were fighting, morale was very important. An army with low morale might collapse when their formation was broken and they suffered 10 to 20% casualties. On the other hand, an army with high morale might still be able to fight even if more than half of their troops were killed or injured. One could imagine their combat strength. Basically, famous generals of the three kingdoms had special skills that affected morale. Although Yen Rou was not a famous historical general, he could be used as half a famous general when fighting against the other tribes. In terms of attributes, Yen Rou was just an ordinary general-type leader. However, when fighting against the other tribes, all attributes +10. With this buff, he instantly reached the level of a rare leader. Bai Xiaowen was deep in thought. He glanced at his status, lingering charm, and then thought about Jinmi's special skill, Feng Yi. He seemed to have understood something. It seems that Jinmi's help is not as simple as a charm buff. After getting Yen Rou as his general, Bai Xiaowen had to ask about the situation of the Wuhuan tribe in Yuzhou. Yen Rou said, Wuhuan also played a part in the suppression of Gongsun Zan. Therefore, Wuhuan is treated with kindness. Every year, Wuhuan will be given a large amount of food, cloth, and iron daily necessities. It is called year bestowal. Wuhuan hasn't harassed Yuzhou province in the past 2 years. Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. What about this year's New Year's gift? Yen Rou replied, I have. Bai Xiaowen thought to himself that it was a pity that he had lost such a great opportunity. He patted Yen Rou's shoulder and said, I'll leave the treasury to you. I still have things to do. Yen Rou understood tacitly and immediately divided the money and provisions in Xiangping's treasury into 2 batches. One batch was worth 10,000 strings of coins, which was to be transported in carriages and sent to Beiping's treasury by his deputy. The other batch was worth more than 20,000 strings of coins, gold, silver, cloth, silk, and so on. He would personally take people to deliver them to General Bai Sanyang. Bai Xiaowen was in charge of Xiangping. He soon met the talent recommended by Wang Lai, Feng Yuan. It was worth mentioning that Gongsun Du once asked Feng Yuan to be the chief inspector, but Feng Yuan refused to take the position. Gongsun Du hated him so much that he couldn't do anything. Now, the second son of the Yuan family had not promised him an official position. He just sent a messenger with gifts of gold and silk to invite Feng Yuan, and Feng Yuan quickly came over. The reputation of the 3 dukes of the 4th generation was not a joke. If Yuan Shu didn't court disaster by claiming to be the emperor and ruining his reputation, the reputation of the Yuan family would be even greater. Bai Xiaowen and Feng Yuan talked for a while and found that this person was similar to Wang Lai. They were both leaders who were knowledgeable about internal affairs, non-combat. Feng Yuan and Wang Lai were not wise and resourceful people, but when they were used to govern a county, they could stabilize the place and make the people live and work in peace. They could also complete the task of providing the ruler with money and food. This was very good. In the era of the 3 kingdoms, it was rare to have read books. People who were knowledgeable were worthy of special treatment. Their knowledge was naturally higher than the majority of illiterates. Bu Yuan recommended another person. His name was Guan Ning. His words were full of praise for Guan Ning, Guan Ning's virtue. I am inferior to him, the knowledge in his heart is 10 times greater than mine. If young master wants a virtuous person, you can send someone to invite him. Bai Xiaowen readily accepted the good advice and sent a messenger to invite Guan Ning again. However, this time, the messenger was refused the door. Guan Ning refused. Bai Xiaowen sighed, it is a pity that a virtuous person is not used by me and buried in the wilderness. However, this was just a verbal request to give face to Feng Yuan. Bai Xiaowen was not interested in the drama of 3 visits to the thatched cottage. In the information collected by Bai Xiaowen, there was a famous scholar named Guan Ning in the late Han dynasty. Guan was a real hermit and had a serious moral cleanliness disorder. In Bai Xiaowen's view, this person was not suitable to be an official. He was only suitable to be a white lotus in the wilderness. Both of you are knowledgeable people. Have you seen this thing before? Bai Xiaowen took out the dragon-patterned gold box and asked Wang Lai and Feng Yuan expectantly. Both of them shook their heads to show that they did not know. Bai Xiaowen was a little disappointed, but he was mentally prepared. Both of them were leaders who focused on internal affairs. Their attributes leaned towards the spirit, and their skills were mostly non-combat skills such as analyzing cases and educating the people. They were completely different from the dragon-patterned gold box, so it was normal that they did not recognize it. However, after Feng Yuan expressed that he had not seen it, he still frowned and said, "This is not an ordinary item. The patterns on it are similar to Taoist talismans. Perhaps a cultivator can open it." Bai Xiaowen was moved. Are there any cultivators in Xiangping City? Looking at Feng Yuan, he had at least come into contact with cultivators. Feng Yuan said, "Half a year ago, I met a cultivator who was cultivating at home. His name was Guokai, and he said that he escaped from the Central Plains. We talked about Confucianism and Taoism, and we got along well. I have seen Taoist classics in his home. Why don't young master summon this cultivator Gua and ask him a few questions?" Interesting. Where does this cultivator Gua live now? Bai Xiaowen asked. Feng Yuan said, "He lives in the 7 alleys in the west of the city." Feng Yuan frowned and asked, "Young master, are you going to visit him?" Bai Xiaowen said with a smile, "Forget it. It's just some rare items, so there's no need to waste time. Right now, the 4 counties of Liaodong are not yet completely stabilized. The most important thing is to pacify the people and take over the defense." Feng Yuan and Wang Lai's brows relaxed, and they said in unison, "Young master, you are right." However, that night, after Bai Xiaowen went to bed, he quietly got up and sneaked out of the marquee mansion. He went straight to the 7 alleys in the west of the city. Bai Xiaowen felt that this Guokai should be the clue to solving the dragon-patterned gold box. Even if he could not solve it, at least he knew someone who could. Everyone had their own social circle. For example, Wang Lai and Feng Yuan were both Confucian scholars. They were in the same circle, and they knew Guan who was also in the same circle. Therefore, as a cultivator, it was normal for Guokai to know people in Xiangping City's cultivation circle. Chapter 1204. Of course, Bai Xiaowen would not summon Guokai directly. This was different from recruiting talents like Rui Yuan and Guan Ning. It would be good if Rui Yuan and Guan Ning came, but if they did not come, it would not affect Bai Xiaowen. He would just hire other officials who were not as good at governance. Guokai, however, might be a clue related to the rank A hero side quest, the Dragon Golden Casket. What if he resisted the government or had a grudge against the Yuan family? What if he ran away after hearing about the recruitment? Once the clue was broken, it would be difficult to find him again. Bai Xiaowen did not care about Guokai in front of Wang Lai and Rui Yuan. On the one hand, he could prevent Guokai from sneaking away after hearing the news in advance. On the other hand, he could establish the image of a proactive and progressive leader. The Dragon Golden Casket was just a toy in the eyes of ordinary people. If Bai Xiaowen gave up on the affairs of the 4 counties of Liaodong to search for the toy, he would easily give people the impression that he was a playboy. Even though the 3 Kingdoms era emphasized loyalty and righteousness, there was another saying, "A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in, and a virtuous minister chooses a master to serve." Back then, Guo Jiao was Yuan Shao's man. Later, he thought that Yuan Shao wasn't a good master, so he secretly ran away. Sun Yu recommended him to Boss Chao. Although Yuan Shao had gathered many talents under him for 4 generations, there were even more talents who had escaped or abandoned him. Sun Yu's comment about him being a commoner hero who could gather people but could not use them hit the nail on the head. 7 alleys in the west of the city, Guo Mansion. Bai Xiaowen appeared at Guo Mansion's back door under the cover of night. He first summoned the shadow assassin, turned invisible, and climbed over the wall to sneak into the mansion. Bai Xiaowen shared his vision with the shadow assassin and controlled her to move forward. Coupled with the large-scale scan of his mind power, Bai Xiaowen soon figured out the structure and layout of Guomanshan's house. Huh? Why does this rune pattern look so familiar? The shadow assassin controlled by Bai Xiaowen stopped in front of Guomanshan's main hall. Bai Xiaowen had seen the rune pattern carved on the main hall before. He searched his memory and quickly recalled it. This is a drawing technique from the Book of Incantations. The Book of Curses was a special item that Bai Xiaowen had obtained when he first entered the Three Kingdoms plane and absorbed the Yellow Turban Army's Yao art curses. It recorded the Yao art curses used by the Yellow Turban Army's Yao art curses. With the help of this book, Bai Xiaowen learned the powerful skill of talisman switching. The Book of Incantations was divided into 4 chapters, and each chapter corresponded to a sub-skill of incantations. Ordinary awakened ones would not care if they had learned a skill, but Bai Xiaowen had a strong memory. He had already memorized the contents of the 4 talismans, as well as the drawing patterns within. The runes in the main hall matched perfectly with the runes in Bai Xiaowen's memory. This meant that this scholar Guokai was related to the virtuous master Zhang Jiao. Of course, it was impossible to make any assertions based on these few strokes of the talisman. Bai Xiaowen decided to take the initiative. He cast a mental shield on himself, then followed the path that the shadow assassin had explored and climbed over the wall. There were not many servants in the Guomanshan, but they were all very capable and had an aura that was different from ordinary servants. They were definitely veterans who had been on the battlefield. Bai Xiaowen avoided the 2 servants who were patrolling at night and quietly snuck into the main hall of Guokai's residence. Guokai was not home. There was no one in his bedroom. Bai Xiaowen then went to the study, but there was no one there. Bai Xiaowen, who had originally wanted to capture Guokai alive or have a face-to-face conversation with him, couldn't help but feel disappointed. He could only search the study, hoping to find more clues. Although there were a few Taoist classics on the bookshelves, they were all common reading materials, such as the Tao Te Ching, etc. Based on these, he couldn't find anything unusual. However, after pushing aside these books, Bai Xiaowen saw 2 yellow talismans behind the bookshelves. The familiar runes were also drawn in the Book of Incantations. However, Bai Xiaowen didn't recognize the complete talisman formed by the combination of the 2 talismans. This was easy to understand. Bai Xiaowen only had a basic understanding of the Yellow Turban Army's talisman art. It was like memorizing the English alphabet, but he didn't know the origin of the letters and the meaning of the words they were combined into. Bai Xiaowen was careful not to touch the 2 yellow talismans. Who knew what kind of trap was hidden inside? After scanning with his mental power, Bai Xiaowen found an abnormal protrusion on the wall behind the bookshelves. He reached over and gently pulled out a piece of movable brick. Surprisingly, there was a hidden compartment inside. This secret compartment might contain Guokai's secret. Just as this thought flashed through Bai Xiaowen's mind, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. The bracelet of misfortune on his left wrist also felt a slight burning sensation. He suddenly rolled backward, and with a buzz, a fist the size of a bucket smashed into the spot he had just been. Raising his head, Bai Xiaowen was taken aback. The one who had attacked him was a burly man covered in yellow. He only had his upper body. From the waist down, it was like the genie in Aladdin's magic lamp, an illusory yellow mist. Bai Xiaowen used insight. Yellow Turban Strongman, Elite Level 10, Race, Construct, Attributes, Strength 80, Agility 35, Constitution 50, Spirit 0, Skill 1, Diamond Protection, Passive. The Yellow Turban Strongman is buffed by the Diamond Talisman. All physical damage received is reduced by 50%. Skill 2, Fist of the Yellow Turban, Passive. The Yellow Turban Strongman's normal attacks will cause the target to be slowed down by 10%. The slowing effect can be stacked up to 3 times. Skill 3, Spiral Charge. The Yellow Turban Strongman will spin and charge in the direction of the target. All enemies in the way will be twisted into its expanding body, causing earth elemental damage, treated as magic damage. This skill will consume 50 durability points of the Yellow Turban Strongman. Skill 4, Conjurer's Summoning Level 3, the Yellow Turban Strongman gains 400 durability points. Skill 5, Power of the Yellow Sky, Beginner the Yellow Turban Strongman gains 300 durability points. What the hell is this? An elite grade construct golem had 1,200 durability points. There are 5 more skills. Bai Xiaowen's eyes widened. Coupled with the diamond protection, this Yellow Turban Strongman would be even harder to kill than a high-ranking leader. Moreover, Bai Xiaowen noticed from the corner of his eye that only one of the 2 yellow talismans on the bookshelf had spontaneously burned to ashes. The other yellow talisman had also started to burn on its own. The energy wave of the Dao spell spread, and a yellow stream of air rolled out. The second Yellow Turban Strongman was gradually forming. Chapter 1205. The first Yellow Scarf Strongman floated toward Bai Xiaowen like a ghost and smashed down with its bucket-sized fist. Bai Xiaowen wasn't panicking. Although the Yellow Scarf Strongman looked fierce, it was a meat shield puppet and didn't have strong attack power. What gave Bai Xiaowen a headache was that if the fight was too fierce, it might attract the attention of the Guo family's guards and alert the enemy. Now that Guo Kai wasn't here, Bai Xiaowen didn't want to take the risk of alerting him. Bai Xiaowen took a step back and raised his hand to summon 2 creatures. Wrathclaw and Butcher. The study room was small and wasn't suitable for a large number of summoned creatures to attack unless the Guo family's house was demolished. Bai Xiaowen used Butcher to distract the 2 Yellow Scarf Strongmen and Wrathclaw to deal damage to the 2 Yellow Scarf Strongmen without alerting the others. Seeing the second Yellow Scarf Strongman take shape and pounce, Bai Xiaowen activated deterrence. It was important to note that Bai Xiaowen controlled the target of deterrence. In his mind, he only regarded the 2 Yellow Scarf Strongmen as hostile targets because his deterrence was a large area control skill that could cover the entire Guo family's house. If he did that, the other members of the Guo family would be alerted. If Bai Xiaowen didn't treat the other members of the Guo family as hostile targets, deterrence wouldn't work on them. The special effect of deterrence LV4, Crush, activated. The 2 Yellow Scarf Strongmen froze and were stunned. Bai Xiaowen kept injecting his mind power and activated the special effect of deterrence LV4. The 2 Yellow Scarf Strongmen didn't have a chance to wake up. Before the Butcher's decaying toxin was activated, Bai Xiaowen took out his Desert Eagle and fired a shot at the 2 Yellow Turban Strongmen. Absalon's shadow roared and pounced forward, activating his bloodlust. The 2 Yellow Scarf Strongmen lost more than 200 points of durability each. 120 of them were true damage. It was a pity that Bai Xiaowen's Desert Eagle's physical damage was reduced by 50% by the Yellow Scarf Strongmen. Otherwise, the first shot would have done even more damage. The Desert Eagle was equipped with a silencer and was turned into a crossbow by default in the 3 Kingdoms plane, so the gunshots wouldn't alert the Guo family's guards. After firing the first shot, Bai Xiaowen immediately switched to Winter Wand and activated Butcher's Rotting Toxin. The 2 stunned Yellow Scarf Strongmen were engulfed by the skill. Angry Claw and Bai Xiaowen focused on the first Yellow Turban Strongman. The Claw's attack was too powerful an attack, and it was too. It's also have attack, its and woods. Its is S. It was like a silent play. Bai Xiaowen, Wrathclaw, and Butcher took less than a minute to eliminate the 2 Yellow Scarf Strongmen. The mental force field played a huge role. Without it, the fight would have alerted others. The 2 Yellow Scarf Strongmen were quite impressive. They each dropped a silver chest. Including Gongsuan's SS, Bai Xiaowen had accumulated 3 gold chests and 4 silver chests after entering the 3 Kingdoms plane. But now wasn't the time to open the chests. Bai Xiaowen sighed and reached for a hidden compartment in the wall. He fished out 2 paper books. Yes, they were paper books. Paper wasn't very popular in the 3 Kingdoms era, but it was still used by some foreigners. Bai Xiaowen opened them and scanned them. These are account books? What's written on them are records of the purchase of food, cloth, and iron. Bai Xiaowen couldn't help but frown. Guakai had hidden them so well and even left 2 yellow-scarfed strongmen's talismans to guard them, but they were actually 2 account books. After thinking for a while, Bai Xiaowen understood. These 2 account books were worthless to an awakened like him, but they were very important to Yozhou's provincial governor, Yuan Shi. For Guakai, their importance had risen to the level of fatal. In the account books, there were only purchases, but no sales. There were less than 100 people in the Gua mansion, including the servants. Why did he buy so much food and cloth? Even if it was a business investment, there should at least be a few sales records, right? There was only one reason for this: to supply the army. Combined with the fierce soldiers and servants that appeared in the mansion, as well as the seal painting at the door, and the yellow turban warrior spell in the study room, Bai Xiaowen's heart was bright. Guakai was definitely a spy planted by the Yellow Turban Army in Xiangping City. He was responsible for purchasing supplies for the Yellow Turban Army. In other words, there should be a Yellow Turban Army lurking outside the city. Bai Xiaowen put away the account books and quietly left the Gua mansion. When he returned to the Marquis mansion, Bai Xiaowen immediately summoned Louis. Louis was one of the generals who had recently surrendered. Bai Xiaowen had already scanned him. This person's strength was mediocre. His attributes barely reached the standards of a commander, and his skills were mediocre. He was far inferior to Yan Rou, who was an SR-ranked fake general. However, Bai Xiaowen was still in the beginning stages. An R-ranked general like Louis could only be used reluctantly. Mediocre strength had an advantage. Bai Xiaowen wasn't afraid of him betraying him. He had the ability to deal with him at any time. Louis was a little excited. His master had summoned him that night because he thought highly of him. "General Liu, how many officials are in charge of guarding the gate of Xiangping City?" Louis quickly replied, "There are 4 in total. Summon all of them to see me." After saying this, Bai Xiaowen ordered a guard to bring Fu Yuan and Wang Lai over. Fu Yuan and Wang Lai lived near the Marquis mansion, so they came faster. Bai Xiaowen gave the 2 account books to them. After the 2 of them read it, their faces became solemn. Obviously, these account books weren't simple. Bai Xiaowen said, "I received a tip-off that Guakai is suspected of colluding with the Yellow Turban Army. These 2 account books are the evidence. What do you think?" Fu Yuan knew why Bai Xiaowen had called them over. He immediately stood up and bowed, "Young master, I was careless and almost recommended the Yellow Turban Army to you. I've only talked with Guakai a few times and found that he's learned both Confucianism and Taoism. He's quite extraordinary, that's all." Wang Lai stroked his beard and said, "Since he's colluding with the Yellow Turban Army, the evidence is conclusive. We must strike him as soon as possible." Bai Xiaowen called them over to let them be mentally prepared in advance. As for the specific strategy, he already had a plan. He said, "Don't be in a hurry. According to the tip-off, Guakai isn't in the mansion tonight. I've already sent someone to summon the city gate officials. We'll make a plan after we know the situation." Soon, the 4 city gate officials were brought to the Marquis mansion. Bai Xiaowen slammed the gavel, which was actually a paperweight on the table, and shouted in a deep voice, "Among the 4 of you, who has dealings with Guakai, the merchant of the 7 alleys in the west of the city?" Chapter 1206. The 4 guards were trembling with fear. They were not stupid. In this kind of situation, they definitely could not admit that they had dealings with Guakai. However, Bai Xiaowen had good eyesight. Based on the frequency of the heartbeat and breathing, he could tell who was lying. His words were as sharp as a knife. In a few words, he had locked onto the main culprit, the North Gate guard, Deng Shouxian. "Deng Shouxian, if you cooperate now and confess, I can spare your life. If you delay the capture of the thief, I will definitely charge you with the crime of having an affair with a yellow turban. This is a serious crime. Think carefully. Don't think that I can't find out. If you don't confess, I will ask the guards at the North Gate. It will just take more time." Deng Shouxian's body trembled and he knelt down. "Provincial governor, I was just muddle-headed and accepted Guakai's golden pearl. That's why I allowed him to leave the city at night, Bai Xiaowen snorted. He wasn't the only one who left the city at night, right? Was there a convoy following him? Yes. Is it the same tonight? Yes, it's the same tonight. At the second watch, Guokai personally led more than 10 carriages out of the city. Wang Lai said angrily, as the gate guard, you actually allowed carriages to enter and leave the city at will. What if there are thieves hiding inside? You should be beheaded for dereliction of duty. Deng Xiaoxian hurriedly explained, Sir, I checked every time and confirmed that there was only corn inside before I allowed them to pass. I definitely wouldn't dare to let thieves into the city. Bai Xiaowen said in a deep voice, every time Guokai leaves the city, when does he come back? Deng Xiaoxian hurriedly said, around the fourth watch. Bai Xiaowen silently calculated the time and said lightly, I already know. Louis. Yes, sir. Louis trembled and stepped out of the ranks. Take your men and set up an ambush at the north gate of Xiangping City. When Guokai's convoy enters the city, you must capture him. Yes, although he agreed, Louis was still somewhat lacking in confidence. Young master, as you said, Guokai is a yellow turban bandit. He might know some demonic techniques. If he escapes, Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. I'll send the Japanese Raven Lady to help. This Raven Lady was subdued by a Taoist expert and her methods were powerful. Even if the yellow scarf demonic man dared to use magic, he would not be able to gain any benefits. You just need to bring more troops to capture them. Understood. Louis thought to himself. This was the first major event since he had surrendered. Bai Xiaowen looked at Deng Xiaoxian. Is your family in Xiangping City? Deng Xiaoxian's face was as white as a sheet of paper and his forehead was drenched in cold sweat. Yes, please spare my life, provincial governor. I was just muddle-headed for a moment. I won't dare to do it again. Bai Xiaowen snorted and said, I'll allow you to redeem yourself. Go back to the north gate immediately and pretend that nothing happened. Guokai will definitely come back from the north gate. When you answer, don't make any mistakes. As long as he enters the city, I'll let you off the death penalty. Bai Xiaowen added in his heart, I can let you off the death penalty, but I'll still punish you severely. At least, I'll make you spit out all the money you've plundered over the years. Deng Xiaoxian was overjoyed and immediately kowtowed. Thank you, provincial governor. Bai Xiaowen stood up and looked around the hall. Everyone lowered their heads in awe. Capture the yellow turban bandit. This matter concerns the safety of Liaodong, Yuzhou, and even Hebei. It can't be taken lightly. Other than Deng Xiaoxian, the other 3 guards are not allowed to leave without permission. Louis, send more men to watch over these 3 people. Yes. Louis replied sternly. Bai Xiaowen said again, this matter is of great importance. I want to be there personally. Wang and Rui, you can go back to bed. Wang Lai and Rui Yuan were both smart people. They rejected almost at the same time. Rui Yuan said, since you want to capture the bandit, we should follow you. There's no reason for us to go back to bed. Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, okay, then I'll have to trouble you too. In fact, Bai Xiaowen wanted Wang Lai and Rui Yuan to follow him. It wasn't that they could be of any use, but it was to prevent the news from leaking out. These 2 people were talents that he had just recruited. Bai Xiaowen didn't want to confine them like he did with the 3 guards. Fortunately, the 2 of them were clear-headed. They didn't foolishly go back to sleep. Instead, they declared that they would follow him. This way, if the news was leaked out, it could at least prove that they weren't the Yellow Turban Bandits' accomplices. Rui Yuan was still a little nervous. After all, he had some interactions with Guokai. Louis led the elite troops of the headquarters and secretly laid an ambush at the north gate. The guard, Deng Xiaoxian, calmed himself down and continued to be on duty. Bai Xiaowen led 2 scribes to observe the north gate in secret. Delifa followed Louis and was about 200 meters away from Bai Xiaowen. At this time, Delifa's transformation of the Japanese Raven Girl was still a distraction for Bai Xiaowen's summoning method. This could ensure that Bai Xiaowen's identity as the second son of Yuan Shi would not be questioned. This time, it took a long time. Guokai's convoy only slowly returned at 5 o'clock. Deng Xiuxian answered carefully and didn't reveal any flaws. Guokai didn't expect that he would be exposed in the middle of the night. The city had become a tiger's den. When Guokai entered the city, Louis gave an order. Hundreds of elite troops shouted and threw nets and hooks. They immediately captured Guokai and the others. Guokai did know some Taoist magic. This was the information that Bai Xiaowen saw when he secretly used his insight. However, Guokai didn't decisively use magic. When he was captured by Louis, he shouted that he wasn't guilty. Louis wouldn't be polite to him. He tied Guokai and the more than 20 people in the convoy with cowhide ropes to ensure that they couldn't resist. Bai Xiaowen heaved a sigh of relief. However, the doubts in his heart were even deeper. Guokai was captured without much resistance. I'm afraid that this explains one thing. The key to cracking the dragon pattern golden box isn't on him. Otherwise, there's no way to explain the difficulty of the mystery in the box mission as high as the A-level hero mission. Don't think that the A-level hero mission could be passed with your eyes closed. It represented an extremely high difficulty. The hunters who had the ability to pass the A-level hero mission were definitely 1 in 10,000. To be precise, even the strong teams in the first division weren't confident to pass this level of difficulty during the exploration of the spiritual world. Bai Xiaowen interrogated Guokai overnight. He had a faint feeling that the key to the dragon pattern golden box should be with the yellow turban thieves outside the city. After all, Guokai was the leader of the psychic type. To be able to order such a leader to act as a dangerous spy and collect food and supplies for the army, there must be a stronger and higher commander among the yellow turban thieves outside the city. Especially when Bai Xiaowen connected the disappearance of the yellow turban army's boss, the virtuous teacher Zhang Jiao, he had a guess in his heart. Guokai, I've already learned everything about you. Let me ask you, where's Zhang Jiao? Chapter 1207. Guokai was shocked. Before he could speak, 2 account books were thrown in front of him. We found these in your study. There are also yellow turban strongmen created by the yellow turban bandits. You colluded with the yellow turban bandits. The evidence is conclusive. Don't even think about defending yourself. Confess quickly. Bai Xiaowen shouted. Bai Xiaowen chose to be direct in order to quickly break through Guokai's psychological defenses. In the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, the internal organization of the Yellow Turban Army was not strict. It could even be said to be very loose. Before the uprising, some followers secretly reported to the government, causing the army to be hastily mobilized. Later, when the various vassals attacked the Yellow Turban Army, they often won with fewer people and easily captured thousands or tens of thousands of people. The captured Yellow Turban Army soldiers, regardless of whether they were soldiers or generals, were mostly willing to accept reorganization. Unexpectedly, Guokai was a tough nut to crack. He glanced at the account books. After his expression changed dramatically, he quickly calmed down. This commoner does not know what Sir is talking about. How dare you be so rude, thief! Wang Lai shouted angrily. Then he asked for instructions from Bai Xiaowen. The thief is stubborn. If we don't torture him, he probably won't confess. Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. Wang Lai immediately ordered the soldiers to swing the big clubs. After dozens of hits, Guokai's buttocks were bleeding. Wang Lai said, Guokai, do you confess? Guokai panted a few times and said calmly, this commoner does not know what Sir is talking about. Wang Lai was even angrier, but he could not do anything. Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. This person is stubborn. It seems that he has been deeply influenced by the Yellow Turban bandits. Don't interrogate him. Take him to prison. When the Yellow Turban bandits are defeated, send him to Jizhou with the bandit chief to await punishment. Wang Lai said, Young master, the Yellow Turban bandits are usually skilled in demonic arts. If we release him and send him to prison, I'm afraid he will escape. Why don't we chain his shoulder blades? No matter how skilled he is, he won't be able to do anything. Bai Xiaowen was amazed. It seemed that the three kingdoms of the spirit realm had some methods for capturing people. This way, at least they did not have to worry about the captives escaping. Bai Xiaowen nodded in agreement, and the soldiers escorted Guokai away. Bai Xiaowen then proceeded to interrogate Guokai's attendants, including the servants of the Guo Manor and the 7 alleys. They were all escorted over to be interrogated. As expected, Guokai's attendants and servants did not have such a tough bone. Under Wang Lai's coercion, a few of them quickly confessed. Bai Xiaowen checked the testimonies and had a preliminary understanding of the Yellow Turban Army hiding in Liaodong. The Yellow Turban Army of Liaodong had escaped from Jizhou. There were about 2,000 of them. This figure was similar to the conclusion Bai Xiaowen came to when he studied the money and food expenditure in the account books. The Yellow Turban Army was currently hiding in the Big Snow Valley in the north of Liaodong County, about 100 li away from Xiangping City. As for the commander of the Yellow Turban Army that Bai Xiaowen was most concerned about, these attendants and retainers did not know. They only said that every time the convoy was sent over, the Yellow Turban Army's leader would come over to deliver the goods, while Guokai would go to the main tent and report the situation to the canal commander alone. As for who the canal commander was, these attendants had never seen him before. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and had the soldiers escort these attendants away. He frowned and pondered. The canal commander of the Yellow Turban Army. Although you've hidden yourself well, you've exposed yourself. You being so careful makes me even more certain of your identity. After all, apart from one person in the Yellow Turban Army, there's no one else in the Yellow Turban Army who can make a leader like Guokai loyally follow him. In the hall, Rui Yuan and Wang Lai each had their own thoughts. Seeing Bai Xiaowen's gaze, Rui Yuan said, "Since young master already knows the whereabouts of the Yellow Turban bandits, we should make a decision as soon as possible." Bai Xiaowen stood up and said, "The Yellow Turban bandits are the enemies of the world. If we want the 4 counties of Liaodong and the entire Yuzhou to be peaceful, we must eliminate them. Pass down the order to all counties in Yuzhou to strictly guard against the Yellow Turban bandits' invasion." That's right. Bai Xiaowen had to fight to the death with the Yellow Turban Army. Some people might say that secretly communicating with the Yellow Turban Army's leader, such as Zhang Jiao, was more in line with Bai Xiaowen's interests. However, Bai Xiaowen was more farsighted. Compared to the Grand Unification mission, the Dragon Pattern Golden Box was only secondary. The identity of Yuan Shi, the second son of the Yuan family, was the foundation of Bai Xiaowen's unification. He could not afford to lose this clean identity. Once he got involved with the Yellow Turban bandits, it would be over. As for secretly colluding with the Yellow Turban bandits, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall. Therefore, Bai Xiaowen was willing to give up the Dragon Gold Box mission to ensure that Yuan Shi's identity was clean. This was the choice he had to make. This, Wang Lai frowned and said, "Young master, this is a bit inappropriate. The Yellow Turban bandits only have 2,000 people. Why should we shake the hearts of the people? We should wipe them out quickly and pacify the people." Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "You're right. However, I have other plans for this, so you don't have to say anything. Go back and rest. Tomorrow, you can deal with the county's affairs as usual." Wang Lai and Ming Yuan were full of doubts. However, Bai Xiaowen had given them the impression that he was a sensible person, so they did not try to persuade him. They bowed and left. Although there were only 2,000 Yellow Turban bandits in the Snow Valley and they were defeated, they were all elites of the Yellow Turban Army who had survived hundreds of battles. Moreover, there were many Yellow Turban leaders. If the boss of the Yellow Turban Army, Zhang Jiao, who Bai Xiaowen guessed, was here, his strength was not to be underestimated. Gongsun Du originally had a group of people under his command, but they had just surrendered and had not been reorganized. They could be used for security and city defense missions. However, if they were to fight a large number of Yellow Turban bandits, they would not be useful. To wipe out the Yellow Turban bandits, they had to mobilize the Yuzhou army. Leaking the news of the Yellow Turban bandits in advance was one of the steps in Bai Xiaowen's game. Before the battle, if the winner is calculated, he will take more, if the loser is calculated, he will take less. Bai Xiaowen's eyes were as deep as a pool. The next morning, when Zhao Rong heard that Bai Xiaowen had annexed the 4 counties of Liaodong, he rushed to Xiangping overnight to meet with Bai Xiaowen. "Young master, you've done a great job." Zhao Rong bowed as soon as he saw him. "It's just a small test," Bai Xiaowen said modestly. "Young master's bravery and strategy will be known throughout the world after this battle." Zhao Rong praised first and then said with a smile, "Young master, Gong Sun Du must have accumulated a lot of money from managing Liaodong." Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "Not at all. Gong Sun Du and his son are not good at management. Liaodong is barren, so their treasury is empty." Zhao Rong was shocked and said, "Young master, you must be joking." "I'm not joking." Bai Xiaowen coughed and changed the topic. "Of course, I'm poor, but I should be able to gather 10,000 strings of cash." Chapter 1208. Zhao Rong said, 10,000 strings of cash is good. Yozhou's treasury is empty right now. With this amount of money, the next time the general asks for grain, we'll have enough. Bai Xiaowen waved his hand and said, "Wait. You can't just take the benefits and ignore the trouble. The 4 counties of Liaodong have a big problem." Zhao Rong was confused. "What problem?" He had rushed here from Beiping and didn't know about the Yellow Turban Army. Bai Xiaowen told him about the Yellow Turban Bandits. Yellow Turban Bandits in Liaodong? Is this news reliable? Zhao Rong asked in surprise. Thief Chieftain Guokai, along with more than 10 of his subordinates, has been taken to prison. There are also account books here, witnesses and material evidence. How can it not be conclusive? Bai Xiaowen said. Then, young master means, of course we have to exterminate them, Bai Xiaowen said matter-of-factly. The Yuan family is responsible for Yuzhou. How can we allow these bandits to harm the people? The Liaodong army hasn't surrendered yet and can't be mobilized. This battle requires the troops of Yuzhou. Zhao Rong complained inwardly, "Young master, are you serious? Everyone knows about the Black Mountain bandits in Jizhou. They've been there for 3 years and the general still turns a blind eye." However, Zhao Rong couldn't refute. He nodded and said, "If we want to mobilize the troops of Yuzhou, we need the general's permission. Why don't you write a letter and ask for the general's permission? Only then will generals Jiao Tan, Zhang Nan, and Yen Rou dare to mobilize." Yen Rou had led 500 soldiers, which was very small. She only had double the number of guards around Yuanxi. It wasn't considered mobilizing troops. Of course, Bai Xiaowen had used these 500 soldiers to do something amazing. It wasn't mobilizing, but it was more like mobilizing. This was why Zhao Rong said, "Young master has done something great." This exclamation was similar to the ancient people's F***ck dealing with more than 2,000 yellow scarf bandits was obviously not a small matter. Bai Xiaowen had expected Zhao Rong to say this. He nodded and said, "You can write a letter, but you need to co-sign it." Zhao Rong really wanted to say, "Can I not get involved in this mess?" However, judging from Bai Xiaowen's intentions, it would be impossible for him not to get involved in this mess. The 10,000 strings of coins were not taken for free. In the end, the letter to Yuan Shao was personally written by Bai Xiaowen. Other than his own name, he also signed Zhao Rong's name at the end. 2 days later, in the Guandu Yuan army camp, Yuan Shao sat on the main seat. He was dressed in martial attire. His complexion was fair, and he had 3 strands of long beard. He was awe-inspiring without being angry. No matter who saw them, they would all praise them. They were worthy of being one of the 3 dukes of the 4th generation. Their bearing was extraordinary. Below, there were 2 rows of long tables on the left and right. A group of strategists sat on the left and right. There were more than 10 of them. In terms of numbers, they were several times stronger than Cao Cao's think tank. Unfortunately, although there were many of them, most of them were hooligans who only knew how to follow what others said. There were only 3 or 4 people who could come up with plans and strategies that Yuan Shaoxin valued. Reporting. Emergency military situation in Yuzhou province. Yuan Shao's eyes narrowed. Bring him up. 3 Yuzhou cavalrymen rushed into the camp, covered in dust. Lord, second young master has sent a letter. All the military situation is in the letter. The envoy at the front knelt on the ground and took out a letter. He held it above his head with both hands. A servant had already taken the letter and passed it to Yuan Shao. Oh? Zhao Rong and Xie actually signed it together. Yuan Shaonai paid more attention to it and opened the sealed letter. After reading it, Yuan Shao's face was filled with joy. He praised, I did not expect Xie to do such a thing in Yuzhou. The strategists below were all curious. One of them asked, Lord, what military situation is there in Yuzhou? Yuan Shao laughed. Shani, Yuan Shi's courtesy name, wrote that he brought 500 elite troops into Liaodong and wiped out the Gongsun father and son. From now on, the 4 prefectures of Liaodong are under our rule. The first reaction of the strategists was, how is that possible? Yuan Shao laughed out loud and passed the letter to everyone to read. Actually, Yuan Shao's first reaction was also disbelief. However, the benefit of Zhao Rong signing the letter was obvious. It greatly increased the credibility of the letter. Yuan Shao got up and walked around the tent. He laughed, this Xie has always been quiet. I did not expect him to earn the Gongsun father and son. When Yuan Shang, who served his father in the camp, saw this, he could not help but be envious. He looked at one of the strategists on the right. That strategist was called Fengji, and he was quite famous in the history of the 3 kingdoms. Fengji saw Yuan Shang's gaze and nodded slightly. He had already finished reading the letter and was thinking about how to open it. At this moment, Yuan Shao was asking the strategists, obtaining the 4 prefectures without spending a single soldier, Shani's contribution is not small. In your opinion, how should we reward him? Fengji got up, and the strategists who wanted to speak immediately shut their mouths. Fengji bowed and said, Lord, in my opinion, second young master should not be rewarded. Instead, he should be scolded. Oh? Yuan Shao frowned unhappily, what do you mean? Fengji had already thought it through and said, Lord, our army is currently in a stalemate with the traitor Cao. If we win, we can unify the north. This is a strategy that involves the big picture and cannot be lost. Behind us, Yuzhou, Qingzhou, Jizhou, and Bingzhou, stability is the most important thing. Second young master's actions are too risky. To put it bluntly, it is the bravery of an ignorant man. He did not consider the consequences if he fails. Seeing Yuan Shao deep in thought, Fengji continued, if he fails and second young master is captured or killed by Gongsun Du, it will cause Liaodong to betray us. Once the Yuzhou war starts, the rear will be in chaos. Luckily, second young master relied on the name of the Yuan family and your good fortune to succeed. However, if the Lord were to reward the second young master for this, it would be encouraging the other officials who were guarding the rear to take such risks. When the rear is not stable, how will our army fight with the traitor Cao? Furthermore, Liaodong is a bitter and cold place, and it is not enough to raise troops. It is just a small profit. Compared to the Lord's ambition to rule the world, which is more important? I hope the Lord will think carefully. On the side, Guatu took the chance to say, Lord, Gongsun Du invited young master to the banquet because he saw how famous the Yuan family is and wanted to make friends with them. As a result, second young master took advantage of the situation. If this matter spreads out, all the lords in the world will laugh at our Yuan family for being untrustworthy. Who would dare to make friends with us? Fengji and Guatu were the strategists that Yuan Shao relied on the most. The moment the 2 of them expressed their stance, the strategists behind them all agreed. Yuan Shao slowly sat down and slapped the table. If not for all of you, I would have made a huge mistake. His actions should not be rewarded in case others follow suit and mess up our army's plan. This kid, I handed Yuzhou to him and hoped that he would be honest. Who knew that he would cause trouble for me? From joy to anger, Yuan Shao's personality changed so quickly that it was comparable to face changing in Sichuan opera. He was just talking about how to reward Yuan Shi and in the blink of an eye, he was thinking about how to punish him. Chapter 1209. Eye of Evolution, Chapter 1207, Beginning of the Winged Cavalry. Combat power off the charts. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1210. A Taoist Priest? Bai Xiaowen's first reaction was that Zhang Jiao had come looking for him. But on second thought, that was impossible. No matter how strong or demonic Zhang Jiao was, he still had to abide by the basic laws. Even if he was the top law lord of the Three Kingdoms, how could he come to the Yuzhou provincial governor's office alone to find trouble with Bai Xiaowen? He must be tired of living. After frowning and thinking for a while, Bai Xiaowen still said in a cowardly manner, "Cecilia, take 300 winged cavalrymen and set up an ambush. Also, send someone to find Yan Rou and get the army ready. I'll meet that Taoist priest in this drill ground." The drill ground was large and suitable for a large number of troops to surround and attack. It was also suitable for the winged cavalrymen to shoot or charge. Bai Xiaowen did not underestimate the experts of the Three Kingdoms just because of Liao Deng's victory. When facing a mysterious Taoist priest, it was basic to follow his heart. Not long after, a Taoist in his 40s floated in with the guards. This Taoist priest was of medium build and had a thin face. He had a goat-like beard on his chin. When he opened and closed his eyes, there was a faint light. Bai Xiaowen did not stand on ceremony and directly used insight. The spirit world's laws prompted him, the target is surrounded by an unknown energy. Insight is ineffective. Unknown reason. Data is in disorder. Do you want to deduct 30,000 spiritual energy points to obtain part of the target's true information? If you do so, the target will be alerted. Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and became even more vigilant. He did not choose to spend spiritual energy points. He nodded slightly and said, "Where did you come from, Taoist priest?" The middle-aged Taoist smiled and said, "Where I came from, and where I'm going." Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, "Taoist priest, do you also like to play games?" The middle-aged Taoist bowed and said with a smile, "Young master's words are in line with the mystery. This Taoist is just interested." Cecilia was dumbfounded. She could understand every word, but when she put them together, she could not understand the meaning of their words. Bai Xiaowen invited the Taoist priest to sit and said, "Taoist priest, you must have something important to come here." The Taoist said, "I had no choice but to come." After pausing for a moment, the Taoist said, "Young master, don't be anxious. Allow me to introduce myself. My Taoist name is Lan Jiatzi. My master is Mr. Wu Jiao, and I have a relationship with Zhang Jiao." Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes. "Mr. Ravenhorn? Are you Zhenren's Wasi?" Lan Jiatzi was slightly surprised and said, "Young master also knows my master's common name?" Zhuasi became famous during the Three Kingdoms era after Cao Cao unified the north. There was an illusion of Zhuasi throwing a cup at Cao Cao. Currently, the Zhuasi's reputation was not particularly well known. They were only known as a traveling doctor who practiced medicine and saved people. Logically speaking, Yuan Shi, the son of an aristocratic family, would never have heard of Zhuasi. However, Lan Jiatzi was good at maintaining his composure. He didn't ask much and continued. "Today, I am here to help young master under the order of my master to get rid of Zhang Jiao for the world." Bai Xiaowen asked curiously, "You just said that Zhang Jiao has a relationship with you? Where did this come from?" Lan Jiatzi said, "Zhang Jiao was originally a mediocre scholar. Later, he met martial uncle who gave him 3 scrolls of the Taiping technique. Only then did he learn the Taoist magic. Come to think of it, he should be my senior brother." Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and combined the information he had collected about the ancient Huaxia's Taoist sects to secretly verify the authenticity of Lan Jiatzi's words. First of all, Lan Jiatzi's identity was doubtful. Bai Xiaowen recalled the Taoist masters of the late Eastern Han dynasty and even the Jin dynasty. There didn't seem to be anyone called Lan Jiatzi. The person who gave Zhang Jiao the Taiping technique was called Nanhua Old Immortal in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. From Bai Xiaowen's point of view, he shouldn't be a real immortal. Nanhua Old Immortal, Sui Ci, and Yu Ji were called the Three Immortals of the late Han Dynasty. Bai Xiaowen didn't know how true this title was. However, Sui Ci's ability was indeed amazing in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. He didn't die from starvation for a year, split a cup of wine, caught a base with a copper plate, threw a cup and turned into a bird, and used the art of transformation. He scared the northern overlord, Boss Chow, into a daze. Such skills were indeed similar to that of an earth immortal. Bai Xiaowen could accept that he was of the same generation as Nanhua Old Immortal. Bai Xiaowen remained calm and continued, "Taoist master, you just said that the heavens had come, so I had to come. What do the words heaven's number mean?" Lan Jiazi said calmly, "We have to start from the root." Back then, Martial Uncle gave Zhang Jiao the Taiping technique with the intention of letting him use it to benefit the people. However, he used it on the evil path and harmed the people, causing chaos in the world. This is the misfortune of our sect, so we naturally need to get rid of him. Taoist master's sect is, Lan Jiazi shook his head, a hidden sect that doesn't seek to be known to the world, so there's no need to mention its name. Bai Xiaowen nodded, "All right." However, why did Taoist master only think of getting rid of Zhang Jiao today? If we killed him before he started a rebellion, wouldn't we have prevented a great disaster from happening to the world? Lan Jiazi said, "Not necessarily. That was then, and this is now." At that time, Zhang Jiao's death wasn't imminent. Even if he died, there would be other people starting a rebellion and shaking the great Han dynasty. This is the general trend of the world, and it won't change because of Zhang Jiao's death. Bai Xiaowen understood. At that time, Zhang Jiao wasn't someone Lan Jiazi's Taoist sect could deal with. After all, he was the Yellow Turban Army's final boss. Not only did he have luck, but he was also heavily protected. The heavens that Lan Jiazi spoke of meant that Zhang Jiao was too powerful to deal with. Now that Zhang Jiao was at the end of his rope, they could deal with him? It would be a waste not to use the help that came knocking on their door. Bai Xiaowen probed, "Taoist master, do you have any Taoist techniques that can rival Zhang Jiao's demonic arts?" Lan Jiazi said, "This humble Taoist has yet to master the Tao, so I don't dare claim that I have any Taoist techniques. I only have a sword that can defeat Zhang Jiao's demonic arts. That's all." Bai Xiaowen wanted Lan Jiazi to demonstrate it to broaden his horizons, mainly to collect information. However, no matter how hard he tried to persuade Lan Jiazi didn't show him any Taoist techniques. Bai Xiaowen shook his head slightly. He could only list this Taoist's assistance as an unknown. Fortunately, he was well prepared. Even without this Taoist, he could still defeat Zhang Jiao. However, he might suffer a great loss. Since this Taoist was here, Bai Xiaowen wouldn't be as cautious as Sun Tzu and Cao Cao. He immediately let Lan Jiazi stay in the guest room. Lan Jiazi was too easy to take care of. As long as he meditated in a quiet room, he didn't eat any of the food that was sent to him. Bai Xiaowen knew that this was a capable Taoist cultivator, so he didn't ask much. He just reminded Cecilia to be more careful. After waiting patiently for the 5th day, Guandu's messenger finally arrived in Yuzhou. The information from Qiao Rui and Jizhou arrived almost immediately. Chapter 12:11. Bai Xiaowen gathered the civil and military officials of Yuzhou to receive Yuan Shao's order. Even the Taoist priest Lan Jiazi came uninvited and stood silently in the corner. Although the Yuzhou officials were curious about the Taoist priest's appearance, no one came forward to question him since Bai Xiaowen did not chase him away. The messenger from Guandu read the general's order. He did not praise or criticize Bai Xiaowen for seizing the 4 commanderies of Liaodong. He sent Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan to deal with the newly discovered Yellow Turban bandits with 5,000 soldiers. However, he still reprimanded Yuan Shi in the letter for spreading the news of the Yellow Turban army all over the city. But it was only a reprimand and no substantial punishment. After all, Yuan Shi was still Yuan Shao's son. Second young master, this is all the general's order. The messenger from Guandu was very respectful to Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, please report to father, she will definitely follow the military orders. After saying that, he ordered the guards to bring the messenger to drink and rest. After resting, he returned to Guandu to report. After the messenger left, Bai Xiaowen glanced around the hall. Yen Rou stepped forward and said, young master has made a great contribution in seizing the 4 commanderies of Liaodong. I didn't expect the general to not reward you. It's really surprising. Zhao Rong smiled bitterly and said, instead, I was reprimanded by my lord for not keeping the news of the Yellow Turban Army a secret. The other Yuzhou officials also expressed their opinions. They did not dare to complain about Yuan Shao's unfair rewards and punishments, but they all felt that the second young master was wronged. Bai Xiaowen said calmly, since it has come to this, there is no need for you to fight for me. General Jiao Tan and General Zhang Nan, father has personally appointed you too. I hope you will fight bravely and return victorious as soon as possible. Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan looked at each other and saluted together, we will not disgrace the general's order. Bai Xiaowen then asked Zhao Rong to be in charge of the allocation of the army's rations. After arranging some logistical matters for the army's expedition, he waved his hand and dismissed them. Zhao Rong and the others stole a glance at Bai Xiaowen's calm and expressionless face before they all took their leave. Lan Jiazi cupped his hands and said, young master's bearing is extraordinary, this humble Taoist is impressed. Today, we are about to set off for battle. If you have any instructions, just say the word and I will obey. Bai Xiaowen took a deep look at Lan Jiazi and said with a smile, thank you, Taoist priest. The civil and military officials of Yuzhou have many conflicts with cultivators. Please don't take it to heart. Lan Jiazi said indifferently, I'm a cultivator, and I'm only willing to deal with dragons among men. As for those ordinary people, they walk different paths and cannot work together. Bai Xiaowen nodded slightly. Lan Jiazi then took his leave. Not long after the officials left, 2 female generals stepped into the hall. They were Qiao Rui and Li Shi. One of them was originally in Guandu, while the other was in Jizhou. They were in charge of relaying information and contacting Tianyu. Now that the war was imminent, they returned to Yuzhou after arranging their affairs. For example, Qiao Rui had worked with the Jin family to develop a new trade route from Yuzhou to Guandu. There was no need to transfer information from the front lines midway. They could reach Bai Xiaowen's desk directly. After Li Shi gave the letter to Tianyu and obtained his support, she secretly returned. Qiao Rui and Li Shi had been away for several days. Bai Xiaowen had given them the excuse of purchasing. For the Yuzhou provincial governor, finding an excuse to cancel a subordinate's leave was a trivial matter. There was no need to mention it. Now, only the 5 members of the White Phoenix squad were left in the hall. Alright, we've split up for more than 4 days. This is the first time the squad has gathered. If there's any situation, you can report it, starting with Shi, Bai Xiaowen said. Li Shi thought for a moment. I heard that in Yuan Shao's camp, there was an uproar because of you. Yuan Shao even smashed everything on the table. Qiao Rui smiled. I know more about the specifics. General Tianyu's letter basically described the situation. Feng Ji and Guotu slandered Yuan Shao, trying to remove him from his position as captain and return to Jizhou to take care of his mother. Fortunately, the military supervisor, Zhu Shou, tried his best to dissuade them, so they didn't succeed. Yuan Shao smashed things in anger because Zhu Shou exposed his shortcomings and mentioned Black Mountain bandit Zhang Yan. Bai Xiaowen nodded. Feng Ji and Guotu, these 2 strategists, although they have some wisdom, they are too selfish. In the romance of the 3 kingdoms, one of them assisted the 3rd brother, Yuan Shang, while the other assisted the eldest brother, Yuan Tan. Although they don't usually get along, they have one thing in common: they don't want me to be in the limelight and have another enemy. Li Shi said, Yuan Shao is too gullible. It feels like he's being controlled by his strategists. He doesn't have the decisiveness of a leader. Yuan Shao has always had this kind of personality, Bai Xiaowen said.
In the Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Guan Yu first killed his general, Yan Liang, and then killed Wen Chou. At this time, Liu Bei just happened to be attached to him. At first, when Yuan Shao heard what his strategists said, he was very angry with Liu Bei. Twice, he wanted to push him out to be beheaded. However, Liu Bei's words prevented him from doing so. Instead, he turned around and blamed his strategists, almost making Yuan Shao bear the name of harming a virtuous person. Li Shi said, "Then isn't he afraid that his soldiers will be disappointed by how he treats you, a meritorious official?" Bai Xiaowen laughed. "How many disheartening things has Yuan Shao done? He imprisoned Tianfeng and then Zhu Shou. Let's not talk about these. Let's talk about one thing." After Wen Chou was killed, Liu Bei said that he could write a letter to Guan Yu and persuade Guan Yu to surrender and help Yuan Shao. What happened? Before Yan Liang and Wen Chao's corpses were cold, Yuan Shao was overjoyed and said, "If I can get Wen Chang, I'll be 10 times better than Yan Liang and Wen Chou." Wouldn't such words and actions make the soldiers of Hebei even more disappointed? Qiao Rui said, "If not for this, Yuan Shao wouldn't have lost to Cao Cao with his family background. If he doesn't lose, the heavens won't tolerate it." Li Shi asked, "Xiaowen, after you found clues about the remnants of the Yellow Turban Army, you caused a commotion in the city. Why did you do this?" "Because of this, Yuan Shao even said that you're not suitable to be a commander. It'll be harder for you to inherit the family business in the future." Bai Xiaowen shook his head and said, "I never intended for Yuan Shao to directly pass the position to me. Whether he likes or dislikes me as his son, it doesn't matter. As for the commotion, it's to make Yuan Shao decide to send troops to suppress the bandits so that I can completely control Yuzhou." His teammates' eyes lit up. "It seems like the captain already has a plan." Qiao Rui said, "Of course, to ensure the success of the plan, I purposely called all of you back. However, I didn't expect that a Taoist who calls himself Zhang Jiao's Jr. would appear. From the looks of it, this Taoist should be on our side. If I had known this earlier, I wouldn't have asked all of you to come back." Bai Xiaowen laughed. "Of course, there are also benefits for all of you to come back. You can earn a lot of war contributions in the battle to eliminate Zhang Jiao." Chapter 12:12. As soon as the messengers from Guandu were on their way back, Bai Xiaowen urged Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan to lead the army. Hunter's time was precious and they didn't have time to waste. Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan had already made some preparations under Bai Xiaowen's urging. But without Yuan Shao's military order, they couldn't go out on their own. Bai Xiaowen originally wanted Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan to lead more soldiers, but he didn't expect his cheap father, Yuan Shao, to have already planned the number in his order. In order not to disobey Yuan Shao's order, Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan could only lead 5,000 cavalry troops to Deshui Valley to eliminate the Yellow Turban bandits. Yuan Shao's action was quite similar to the style of Principal Chang in the Republic of China. He didn't consider the actual situation at the front line. Bai Xiaowen didn't try to persuade them, nor did he reveal that the leader of the Yellow Turban bandits might be Zhang Jiao. The 6th day. Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan led 5,000 troops to the vicinity of Deshui Valley. The scouts reported that they didn't find any Yellow Turban bandits in the valley, but they saw the camp and the ashes of the bonfire. It seems that the Yellow Turban bandits knew that they were exposed and ran away in advance. Jiao Tan said, "If we had led the army to attack when we found the bandits, we wouldn't have missed the opportunity. We have been waiting for General's order for 4 days. Even if the Yellow Turban bandits don't have eyes and ears, they would have heard the news and run away." Zhang Nan sighed. "Be careful with your words," Jiao Tan said. "Send more scouts to patrol around and look for traces of the Yellow Turban bandits. " Since the ashes of the bonfire are still there, it means they didn't run far. The two generals were not completely idiots. They did not rashly enter the Great Snow Valley. Instead, they chose a relatively flat area on the nearby frozen ground to rest and reorganize. At the same time, they sent out their scouts to scout the surroundings.
the 5,000 Yuzhou army could only temporarily put down the idea of killing and sat cross-legged on the ground to rest. "Generals, should we set up a camp so that our army can have a foothold and guard against the sudden attack of the Yellow Turban bandits?" A female general behind them said. Jiao Tan glanced back and slightly frowned. "General Qiao, don't make a fuss over a minor issue. The Yellow Turban bandits' fighting power is extremely weak, and there are only 2,000 of them, less than half of our army. There is a saying in the art of war, encircle 10 times, strike 10 times. If we find traces of the Yellow Turban thieves, our army can annihilate them in one go and return victorious. No matter how daring the Yellow Turban bandits are, they will not attack our army with such a weak force." Jiao De took into consideration that this General Qiao Rui was a trusted aide of young Master Yuan Shi, therefore, his tone was relatively gentle. If it were any other general of the Ivory Gate, he would have reprimanded him long ago. It was needless to say that the Yuzhou army had been working hard all this while. Once the order to rest was given, the cavalry dismounted and sat together with the infantry, taking out dry rations from their bosoms and munching on them. Qiao Rui got up and looked at the Yuzhou soldiers sitting cross-legged in a disorderly manner. Shaking her head, she said in the team channel, "Yuan Shao has taken away more than half of the elites of the Yuzhou army. The remaining miscellaneous troops are too weak. Out of 100 people, there are only a few elite old soldiers. Yes, they are far inferior to Guandu's army. The ratio of elite soldiers is higher." Deputy General Li Shui on the side also muttered. Suddenly, Qiao Rui's eyes focused, and his expression changed. "Not good. There is a large group of people approaching, very close." She was shocked. The enemy had so many people, but all of them were able to fool her mental senses. If this was the effect of someone using mental energy to block her, this meant that the person's mental energy was completely above hers. Zhang Nan's expression changed. He lay on the ground and listened carefully. He heard a slight trembling sound coming from the frozen ground. Zhang Nan jumped up. "Enemy attack. Northeast, there is a large group." Jiao Tan pulled him back. "Don't say anything. I already saw them." 2 groups of soldiers with yellow turbans on their heads charged down the mountain from the 2 sides of the valley. In a hidden corner of the valley, there was an army with the banner of General Heaven Duke running out of the valley. Luckily, Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan were careful and did not charge into the valley with their 5,000 men. Otherwise, they would have suffered heavy losses if they were ambushed by the Yellow Turban army. "Cavalry, get on your horses. Infantry, get in formation. Meet the enemy." Jiao Tan roared and got on his horse with his spear. The group of personal guards beside him also mounted their horses and clustered around Jiao Tan. Deputy General Zhang Nan did the same. General Heaven Duke? Why is it this banner?" Jiao Tan's expression changed drastically. In the 3 kingdoms of the spiritual world, seeing General Heaven Duke's banner was like seeing Lu Bu's banner. The reason why the Yellow Turban army was able to survive until now was not only because of their mass support, but also the existence of virtuous teacher Zhang Jiao. The 3 groups of Yellow Turban army didn't have many cavalrymen. Most of them were infantry. They didn't seem to be moving very fast, but as a green light flashed, all the Yellow Turban soldiers seemed to have been injected with chicken blood. They roared loudly and charged forward, their speed much faster than before. The Yuzhou army originally had enough time to get into formation, but this unexpected increase in speed made them unable to reorganize their formation before they clashed with the 3 groups of Yellow Turban army. About 2 kilometers away from the battlefield in the valley, Bai Xiaowen rode on the back of the Wrath Claw with 3 people beside him. Delifer, as a camouflage for Bai Xiaowen's summoned creatures, had been following by his side as the Japanese Raven Girl. The other 2 were Cecilia and the mysterious Taoist, Lan Jiazi. Bai Xiaowen was sitting cross-legged on the back of the Wrath Claw. He squinted his eyes. He looked like he was taking a nap, but he was actually observing the battle through the Shadow Assassin's long-distance vision sharing. Although he could see the general situation from a high vantage point, he couldn't see it as clearly as watching it live. Bai Xiaowen needed to observe carefully to find the best opportunity to cut in. Lan Jiazi looked thoughtfully at Delifa and then at Bai Xiaowen. He smiled and said, "Young master, you look like an otherworldly Taoist." Bai Xiaowen did look like a Taoist when he sat cross-legged on the back of the giant wolf. Bai Xiaowen opened his eyes and smiled. He didn't deny it. Lan Jiazi guessed that Bai Xiaowen must be a disciple of a Taoist master. With his eyesight, he could see that the Japanese raven girl was just a disguise. However, since Bai Xiaowen didn't say anything, Lan Jiazi didn't ask. After all, he didn't tell Bai Xiaowen everything about his sect. "How's the battle?" Cecilia asked in a low voice. Bai Xiaowen closed his eyes again and said slowly, "The Yuzhou army underestimated the enemy and lost their formation. Coupled with the influence of Zhang Jiao's banner, their morale plummeted. They were forced to retreat even though they were twice as strong as the enemy. I have evolution, I have evolution." Chapter 12-13. Bai Xiaowen turned back and looked at the 600 winged cavalrymen under the high slope. They were all wearing black steel-made armor and had a solemn expression. These 600 winged cavalrymen were the elite soldiers he had raised from all over the world after entering the Three Kingdoms. They were also the ones he would rely on to dominate the Three Kingdoms in the future. Cecilia had already told Bai Xiaowen that her commanding ability was limited. She could only train 800 winged cavalrymen at most, which was in line with her level. In fact, it was enough. According to Bai Xiaowen's inquiry, the winged cavalrymen's combat power increased with the organization, formation, and scale. 600 winged cavalrymen had 27,000 combat power, which was equivalent to the combat power of each winged cavalryman being increased by 3 times the initial value. However, this 3 times increase was basically the limit of the winged cavalrymen's improvement. 800 winged cavalrymen had 36,000 combat power, which was still 3 times the initial value. After completely controlling Yuzhou, Bai Xiaowen planned to let Cecilia train the other 200 winged cavalrymen. After each battle, he would add more winged cavalrymen to ensure that the number of winged cavalrymen was enough. If there were more, even if Cecilia could train them, he couldn't afford to raise them. The requirement of the first main mission, train the horses and mobilize the troops, was that the army's combat power should not be less than 5,000. Bai Xiaowen's current army's combat power had already exceeded this value. He estimated that if he submitted the mission now, he should be able to meet the requirements of the second main mission. It was not easy to think that it was easy. If it were other hunters, even if they were given the identity of Yuan Shi to enter the Three Kingdoms, it would not be so easy to get so much money. After all, in the context of the Three Kingdoms of the Spirit Realm, Yuan Shi, the second son, was only a nominal governor of Yuzhou. The military and political power of Yuzhou was firmly controlled by Yuan Shao through Zhao Rong, Jiao Tan, and other civil and military officials. Bai Xiaowen mainly had a clear mind and a high charm value, which was why he could consecutively persuade Tianfeng and the Jin family to support him in a short time. Of course, riding into Liaodong alone and killing Gongsun Du and his son was the embodiment of Bai Xiaowen's solo ability as a summoner. It was also a difficult task that most hunters could not accomplish. Of course, in reality, training a group of elite soldiers in 3 days sounded like a fantasy. However, the spiritual realm was different from reality. Under the operation of the rules of the spiritual realm, as long as one had money, food, soldiers, and a general who was good at training special troops, Cecilia, one could train special troops in a short time. Of course, the winged cavalry that had just come out of the army only had pure strength. Their attributes, skills, and other aspects had reached the standard. The soldiers' combat skills and battle experience were still lacking. They needed to be baptized by battle and eliminated by life and death situations before they could grow. Bai Xiaowen stood up and said, "It's about time. If we wait any longer, Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan's 5,000 men will definitely be defeated by the 2,000 Yellow Turban army. At that time, they won't be of any help to us. pass down my order, the entire army is to gather at the Great Snow Valley battlefield. Cecilia nodded and mounted white jade Jing. The flag with the word Yuan was raised, and the 600 winged cavalry surged forward like a tide of iron. Taoist Lang Yazi did not have a mount and was following behind leisurely. However, the strange thing was that he was clearly taking a leisurely stroll, yet each step he took covered a distance of several feet. He could easily keep up with the speed of the winged cavalry's Yuzhou horses. Cecilia was dressed in white armor. She spent 100 psionic points to replace the default transformation of the spiritual realm's rules. When she was about 200 meters away from the battlefield, she waved her hand and the winged cavalry behind her stopped. Release the arrows. With the order, the winged cavalry took off their iron bows and pulled out arrows made of well-tempered steel. Swish. 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 The arrows fell like rain. The winged cavalry aimed at the Yellow Turban army. Although the two armies were fighting, the Yuzhou army was retreating, and the Yellow Turban army was chasing after them. They were not in a chaotic battle. Therefore, the arrows of the winged cavalry mostly hit the Yellow Turban army. Only a small number of them were injured. Bai Xiaowen rode on the Wrath Claw and leaped onto a mound. He shouted, "Jiao Tan, Zhang Nan, where are you?" With the enhancement of his mental power, his voice was like rumbling thunder that spread throughout the battlefield. Amidst the chaos, Jiao Tan heard him and quickly replied, "I'm here." He was surprised. He did not expect the second son of the Yuzhou provincial governor to come to the battlefield. He even brought a group of elite cavalry with him. In the midst of despair, a glimmer of hope ignited in Jiao Tan's heart. "I'll give you 15 minutes to reorganize your army," Bai Xiaowen said sternly. "Otherwise, as the commander, you won't be able to escape punishment." The winged cavalry's continuous shooting caused the Yellow Turban army to suffer many casualties. The horn sounded, and the Yellow Turban army worked together. 2 rows of Yellow Turban elites held wooden shields at the front, blocking the rain of arrows as they slowly advanced. This gave Jiao Tan time to reorganize. He hurriedly ordered his personal guards to gather. Then, with the personal guards as the center, he raised the flag of the commander and gathered the scattered soldiers into formation. The ancient armies of the spirit realm had a special characteristic. If the commander died, the army would be routed. Even if they outnumbered the enemy, it was inevitable that they would flee. However, if the commander was still there and raised the flag, the soldiers would gather like ants. This was why the commander was very important in the ancient wars of the spirit realm. It's easy to have 3 armies, but difficult to find a commander. In the battle just now, the Yuzhou army had lost so quickly because Zhang Nan's flag had been cut down and his personal guards had been scattered. Bai Xiaowen sighed. With Jiao Tan reorganizing the scattered soldiers, the Yuzhou army would not disrupt the formation of the winged cavalry. Otherwise, he would have no choice but to kill them and trample them into meat paste. In that case, the casualties of the winged cavalry would be even greater. Jiao Tan also knew the importance of a cavalry formation. As he fled, he gathered the scattered soldiers and ordered them to split into 2 groups so that they could escape from the 2 sides of the winged cavalry's neat formation. It was like running water meeting a reef. The elite Yellow Turban army swordsmen protected the front, greatly reducing the damage of the winged cavalry's arrows. Fortunately, the winged cavalry used well-tempered steel arrowheads, which had a strong ability to penetrate shields. Even after piercing through the wooden shields of the Yellow Turban army swordsmen, they still suffered some casualties. This was why the Yellow Turban army did not dare to advance in large numbers. They could only advance slowly. In the team channel. "The main force of the Yellow Turban army is here, right?" Bai Xiaowen asked. Qiao Rui, who had been following the army, said, "That's right. However, we don't see Zhang Jiao. We only see his flag." "Ignore him," Bai Xiaowen said in a deep voice. "Sister Qiao, start playing the soul rhythm. Shui, target the Yellow Turban army's leader. Begin the counterattack."
Chapter 12-14. Qiao Rui played the soul rhythm with a bamboo flute, and the Yellow Turban Army's soldiers were stacked with weakened status. Delafa waved his hand, and Bai Xiaowen summoned the Death Knight and appeared in front of the winged cavalry. Lan Jiazi looked at Bai Xiaowen in surprise, but he did not say anything. Bai Xiaowen didn't care too much. He directly controlled the Death Knight and activated his most important skill at the moment. Army Charge. Army Charge. When the Death Knight activates super armor, it will be immune to all displacement effects and control skills below priority 7. It will also deal 200% physical damage. When the Death Knight's allies charge with the Death Knight, they will receive the same super armor. The Death Knight and the 600 winged cavalry behind it were covered in a layer of blood-red light. A huge blood-red arrow was pointed at the main force of the Yellow Turban Army. Kill! 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 The 600 winged cavalry seemed to be motivated. They had the courage to crush everything in their path. Even the mountains could not stop them. They put away their iron bows and took out their well-tempered spears from their hooks. Then, they charged with a battle cry. The 600 winged cavalry penetrated the 2,000 men of the Yellow Turban Army. Unless the winged cavalry was killed, they would not be able to stop their charge. The Yellow Turban Army's formation was in chaos. The blood-red light that enveloped the winged cavalry gradually disappeared. The Death Knight turned his horse around and led the winged cavalry to charge again. However, this time, he did not have the super armor buff of Army Charge. Army Charge could only be used once. After that, it would enter a cooldown period. However, in a battle between two armies, the first charge was the most important, especially when the cavalry was fighting against the infantry. The Yellow Turban Army's formation was in chaos. Even without the buff of super armor, the second charge would not affect them much. Li Shi had seized the opportunity to charge into the enemy's formation. A messy formation without a unified command was the best battlefield for an agile warrior like Li Shi to display her skills. Li Shi killed a few Yellow Turban Army soldiers and stacked his buffs. Then, like a ghost, he appeared in front of a Yellow Turban Army general. Li Shi's two swords whistled through the air and stabbed his horse down in the blink of an eye. Then, with a series of metal clashing sounds, the Yellow Turban Army general's long saber was sent flying by Li Shi. The hidden edge of the heavenly concealment sword art was extremely effective against close combat leaders. Li Shi fought at close range. The Yellow Turban general was like a general on the battlefield who had met a martial arts master. He could not use his bow, horse, and long weapons. He could only roar as blood spurted out of his wounds. Qiao Rui's soul rhythm quickly reached a high level. The Yellow Turban Army felt as if they had been cursed, and their strength greatly decreased. Just as the Yellow Turban Army's casualties were rapidly increasing, a loud shout suddenly rang out in the air, shaking everyone's hearts. Heaven and earth righteous Dharma, order all evils to disperse, Imperial. With just a few words, all of the Yellow Turban Army's soul rhythm's negative status were cleared. Qiao Rui, who was playing the bamboo flute, suddenly trembled and fell backward. 2 streaks of red seeped out of her nostrils. Above her head, a damage number suddenly appeared, 196. Qiao Rui smiled bitterly. She wanted to play the soul rhythm again, but she realized that she could not activate it no matter what she did. The soul rhythm skill that came with the soul bamboo flute had turned gray and was temporarily unavailable. Bai Xiaowen was shocked. He had received a notification from the spiritual realm's precepts. The Yellow Turban Army's commander, Grand Conjurer Zhang Jiao, has activated the skill, Imperial Order, Spell Breaker. Spell Breaker? Is it to remove the negative status on allies? Judging from Sister Qiao's appearance, it seems like it will counterattack the caster. Just as Bai Xiaowen shared this information, another shout rang out in the air. Lin, Bing, Do, Zhe, advance in groups. Imperial Order, Spell Breaker. A green light spread across the battlefield. The Yellow Turban Army roared. Every soldier's body became taller and stronger.
There was an indescribable fanaticism in their eyes, and their movement speed increased significantly. The winged cavalry's second wave of charge was stopped halfway through. In order to slow down the winged cavalry's speed, the Yellow Turban Army did not hesitate to use their flesh and blood to stop them. Under the green light, the Yellow Turban Army's injured stun ability was greatly enhanced. They used their flesh and blood to stop the Steel Cavalry's flood, but they were only pushed back slightly. After that, other Yellow Turban Army soldiers would rush forward to replace them. The formation that the winged cavalry could easily break through was now as firm as a rock. The Yellow Turban Army soldiers shouted, and the scattered formation regrouped. Without their charging ability, the cavalry's threat to the infantry was greatly reduced. They could only rely on their steel spears to fight the Yellow Turban Army. From time to time, the winged cavalry would be cut down from their horses. Then, the fearless Yellow Turban Army soldiers would pounce on them and use their numbers to reduce their numbers. This Zhang Jiao's sorcery is indeed powerful. Bai Xiaowen turned to look at Lan Jiazi. Taoist priest, do you know the sorcery Zhang Jiao used? Lan Jiazi stroked his beard and said, he used the Taoist secret incantation. The incantation has a total of 9 sentences and 81 words. Cultivators live deep in the mountains and often encounter ferocious tigers and snakes. Chanting the incantation can protect one's body and keep them light. It can also drive away evil spirits and prevent them from being harmed by tigers and wolves. However, Zhang Jiao was able to use the secret incantation in a military formation with such a strong effect. He is indeed a Taoist genius. It's a pity that he did not use it on the righteous path. Bai Xiaowen said, Taoist priest, since you know Zhang Jiao's background, please use your sorcery to break Zhang Jiao's secret incantation. Lan Jiazi shook his head and said, Zhang Jiao's incantation is a new interpretation of the Taoist incantation. I don't know how to break it. Bai Xiaowen was speechless. After all this time, you're just a talker. He shook his head helplessly. It seemed that he had to use his own methods this time. There was no way to hide it anymore. Bai Xiaowen looked behind him and saw that Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan had already gathered their troops. He shouted, Jiao Tan. 30 minutes have passed. I order you to lead the troops to attack the Yellow Turban Army's flanks. Attack them from both inside and outside with the winged cavalry. Jiao Tan had just been rescued by Bai Xiaowen from a defeated army. He wanted to muster up his courage and fight to reduce his guilt. He agreed loudly and ordered his soldiers to beat the drums and attack the Yellow Turban Army from the flanks. At first, the Yuzhou army was defeated for a while and lost more than 1,000 men. Then, the defeated soldiers fled. Jiao Tan gathered the defeated soldiers and had less than 3,000 men left. The rest of the soldiers had fled. However, these 3,000 soldiers were not a small force. After beating the drums, Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan led their troops to attack again. There's more today. Chapter 12-15. Although the Yellow Turban Army had been imbued with Taoist spells and became fearless of death, their numbers and basic combat power were their weaknesses. Gradually, they began to lose ground. At this moment, Zhang Jiao finally appeared. He didn't have an imposing aura. Instead, he looked like an old man with a withered body. When Lan Jiazi saw Zhang Jiao's aged appearance, he sighed and said, Why bother? Using human strength to defy fate? You're just wasting your life. Zhang Jiao rode on a black donkey and held a rosewood staff. He wore a tall crown on his head and appeared on top of a mound. He raised his hand to the sky and prayed silently. Then, he opened his eyes. At that moment, Bai Xiaowen activated insight and saw 2 lightning vortexes. He shook his head to dispel the illusion. He used insight on Zhang Jiao and only received some basic information. Zhang Jiao, Lord Level 10, /Starlight Life Extension, Race, Humanoid/Human, Class, Grand Conjurer, Attributes, STR-36, DX-31, STR-100, WIL-170, Lord Skill, Thunderbolt Aura, Passive. Zhang Jiao periodically gains Imperial Lightning energy. The energy can be used as a shield to block damage for Zhang Jiao or to strengthen Zhang Jiao's lightning skills. Activating Thunderbolt Aura will cause a series of lightning bolts to fall continuously in a large area, causing heavy lightning damage to enemies in the area. Treated as magic damage, Exorcism attribute, unparalleled skill. Skills 1-5. Skill 6, Grand Conjurer's Wisdom LVL3, gain 500 extra HP and 50% toughness. Skill 7, Power of the Yellow Sky, Master gain 1000 extra HP and 30% fixed damage reduction. Bai Xiaowen focused on the Starlight Life Extension status. Starlight Life Extension, Zhang Jiao uses the 7-star lantern to extend his life by 10 years. As a price, he will suffer an unknown backlash. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. It seemed that the Starlight Life Extension status wasn't the key point. It was impossible to expect Zhang Jiao to suddenly die during the final battle. What bothered Bai Xiaowen more was that Zhang Jiao's 5 major skills couldn't be detected. Even the most crucial skill, Zhang Jiao's unparalleled skill, couldn't be detected. Could it be that Zhang Jiao's skills are the same as awakening skills and can't be detected? I can only passively receive information. Bai Xiaowen recalled that Zhang Jiao had cast 2 edicts before he showed up. It was very similar to the skill system of the awakening skills. Soon, Bai Xiaowen's thoughts, Zhang Jiao's, Zhang. The yellow sky shall rise, yellow skies rise. The Golden Age suns the golden air. After the familiar 16 words, Zhang Jiao suddenly spread out his arms. Lightning art, yellow lightning pool. The dazzling lightning instantly enveloped the Yuzhou army under Jiao Tan. The powerful AoE lightning attack caused Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan's newly formed formation to crumble once again. After the power of the Thunderbolt, an empty space of 100 meters was cleared out in Jiao Tan's army. Only some blackened armor and weapon fragments were left. Everything else had been vaporized by the power of the Thunderbolt. Only then did Bai Xiaowen receive a small part of the information regarding one of Zhang Jiao's skills, Thunder Technique. But it was too late. Fortunately, the lightning art, yellow lightning pool didn't differentiate between friend and foe, and its area of effect wasn't particularly large. Otherwise, Zhang Jiao only needed to throw it at the center of the battlefield, where the winged cavalry and yellow turban army were fighting fiercely. Surround Zhang Jiao! Bai Xiaowen shouted. He suddenly realized something. Zhang Jiao's lightning spell, Yellow Heaven Lightning Pool, was so powerful. It must be the passive effect of his lightning strike halo. The accumulated Imperial Lightning energy strengthened his lightning attribute skill. Thunderbolt Halo allowed Zhang Jiao to periodically gain Imperial Lightning energy, and this layer of energy could be used as a shield. In other words, Zhang Jiao couldn't be allowed to cast his lightning art. Bai Xiaowen took out his Desert Eagle and fired at Zhang Jiao. Zhang Jiao felt the threat of the shot. His Taoist robe fluttered without any wind and quickly inflated like an inflated balloon. Bang! The bullet hit Zhang Jiao, and the inflated robe quickly shrank. At the same time, a bloody hole appeared in Zhang Jiao's chest. Bai Xiaowen sighed. The Desert Eagle's first shot had a 100% critical rate. It should have dealt a lot of damage, but it was blocked by Zhang Jiao's defensive skill. Only Absalon's Blood Essence Stone passive had dealt 300 true damage. Although the damage was high, it also reflected a frightening fact: Zhang Jiao's HP was as high as 3,000. Of course, Bai Xiaowen had mentally prepared himself for this. After all, with insight alone, Zhang Jiao's HP had already reached 1,100 Constitution, plus 500, Great Conjurer's Wisdom LV, 3, plus 1,000, Power of the Yellow Sky, for a total of 2,500 HP. As for the Peerless skill and other combat skills, any one of them could increase his maximum HP, so it would not be difficult for him to exceed 3,000 HP. Bai Xiaowen was not discouraged. With a wave of his hand, 10 skeletal archers appeared. At the same time, the butcher's huge body landed. Bai Xiaowen's choice of landing spot was very important. the 10 skeletal archers were not concentrated in one spot. Instead, they were arranged around Zhang Jiao, forming a large circle. After the butcher's rotting toxin reduced armor and resistance, the skeletal archers launched a wave of attacks. 6 Ding 6 Jia, at my command. Zhang Jiao's second skill, Talisman, 6 Ding 6 Jia, was activated. He waved his sleeves, and 4 white talismans flew out at the same time. Each talisman turned into 3 blurry gods and disappeared into his body at the same time. This 6 Ding 6 Jia skill provided Zhang Jiao with 800 defense points. The only downside was that it only lasted for 15 seconds, which was quite short. However, Bai Xiaowen's insight showed that after the 6 Ding 6 Jia skill's duration ended, if there was still some defense points left, it would heal Zhang Jiao's HP in a 1:1 ratio. Bai Xiaowen gritted his teeth. Zhang Jiao was more powerful than he had expected. However, even if the defense points duration was short, they had to be destroyed. They could not wait. If they waited until Zhang Jiao's next wave of Imperial Thunder energy accumulated, it would be another terrifying thunder skill. The Yuzhou army's morale would definitely collapse. However, the butcher had just swung his giant serpent scepter at Zhang Jiao when a bolt of lightning suddenly struck down from above his head. It was the active effect of the thunderbolt aura, randomly striking down lightning. The butcher's movements paused. His head was charred black, and his HP dropped by 300 points. Such power. The butcher was different from other summon creatures. It had +6 armor on it. Coupled with the Poison Fang Priest equipment set's damage reduction effect on poison targets, as well as magic resistance, the butcher's damage reduction was at least 50%. Of course, there was one reason for this. Lightning damage was considered evil breaker damage. As an undead, the butcher was countered by evil breaker damage. However, this was already troublesome enough. Most importantly, the lightning was random. Even Zhang Jiao did not know who it would hit. Bai Xiaowen had no way of notifying his teammates in advance, nor could he control his summoned creatures to avoid it. Chapter 12:16. I have no choice but to activate my backup plan in advance. Bai Xiaowen took a deep breath and was about to give the order when Lan Jiazi suddenly floated forward. Young master, let me help you break Zhang Jiao's thunder-controlled demonic art. Lan Jiazi took out a 3-inch long wooden sword from his sleeve, cut his finger, and pointed it at Zhang Jiao. Swish! The 3-inch long wooden sword expanded in the wind and flew to Zhang Jiao's head, turning into a 3-foot-long wooden sword that hung above his head. A wave of energy that Bai Xiaowen could not see but could feel was emitted. It seemed to lock this part of the world, making the flow of the surrounding spiritual particles obscure. Swish! Zhang Jiao's thunderbolt halo suddenly disappeared. He coughed violently several times, choking out black blood clots. The black donkey he was sitting on let out a mournful cry and knelt on the ground, crushed into meat paste. Who are you? Zhang Jiao looked as if he was carrying a mountain. Half kneeling and half squatting, he stared at Lan Jiazi. Lan Jiazi raised his sword fingers with his left hand and made a half bow with his right hand. Senior brother Zhang Jiao, I'm here to kill you under the orders of Master Ravenhorn and Martial Uncle Nanhua the Immortal. Martial Uncle's sword is here. Why don't you kneel down and repent? The 3-foot-long wooden sword emitted a green light. This green light and Zhang Jiao's Taoist green light seemed to be of the same origin, but there was a qualitative difference in the degree of solidification. With Bai Xiaowen's spirit, he could sense the difference in nature between Zhang Jiao's Taoist green light and the wooden sword's green light. The wooden sword's green light was purer and had an ethereal aura, while Zhang Jiao's green light was as turbulent as the sea. Zhang Jiao sneered. My Tao is different from Nanhua's. I'll kill anyone who stands in my way, even if it's the heavens and the earth. Let alone a master. As Zhang Jiao spoke, his body straightened up inch by inch. Even the 3-foot-long wooden sword seemed unable to suppress him. Come. I want to see who is stronger between me and the Tao of Nanhua. Lan Jiazi seemed to be struggling to maintain the 3-foot-long wooden sword. Clearly, he was at a disadvantage. However, he didn't show much anxiety or panic. Instead, he sighed and said, "How can there be a difference in strength between the 3,000 great Daos? Your desire to win is too strong, so you are at a disadvantage. Moreover, what you're persisting in is only your obsession, and it's not the Tao. What qualifications do you have to compare yourself with Senior Uncle Nanhua?" Bai Xiaowen looked at Lan Jiazi's strenuous appearance and secretly ridiculed Lan Jiazi in his heart. This Lan Jiazi really is the all-mouthy king. He has never won a fight or lost an argument before. However, Lan Jiazi taking the initiative to attack was also a good thing. At the very least, he managed to restrain Zhang Jiao's thunderbolt halo, so Bai Xiaowen didn't have to worry about being struck by lightning at any time. The 10 ghoul archers played their roles. Under Bai Xiaowen's control, they fired again and again, continuously reducing the value of Zhang Jiao's shield. Zhang Jiao snorted. "Unorthodox Tao, watch out for my thunder technique." Zhang Jiao suddenly raised a finger. Bai Xiaowen's scalp went numb. He hurriedly airdropped the skeleton warriors. The skeleton warriors danced with their swords and charged forward, trying to interrupt Zhang Jiao's casting. However, Zhang Jiao's thunder technique was already at the level of an awakening skill. The smallest casting motion was enough to release the skill. It wasn't something that the skeleton warriors could interrupt. The skeleton warriors crashed into Zhang Jiao's body, but it didn't cause any damage to him. It only made him float back a few feet. He pointed at one of the ghoul archers. Thunder technique, finger lightning snake. A chain of lightning burst forth, directly shattering the first ghoul archer. Then, it jumped to the second ghoul archer, then the third, the fourth. One lightning art, finger coiling lightning snake killed 5 skeletal archers. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen had scattered the ghoul archers, so they weren't all killed in one wave. It wasn't hard to imagine that if the non-mutated melee skeleton soldiers, the shield warriors, surrounded him, the outcome would be even worse. First of all, it was very difficult for the skeletal sword-shielded soldiers to interrupt Zhang Jiao's spellcasting. Once his coiling finger lightning snake was released, the 10 skeletal sword-shielded soldiers would probably be bounced by the chain lightning, and all of them would be blasted to pieces. Zhang Jiao seemed to be troubled by the siege of Bai Xiaowen's summoned creatures. He waved his sleeves again, and 4 yellow talismans flew out and spontaneously burned in the air. Talisman, Yellow Turban Strongman. 4 yellow turban strongmen appeared. Bai Xiaowen smiled bitterly. He had fought 2 yellow turban strongmen before. They had as high as 1,200 points of durability and passive damage reduction skills. They were the strongest among the elites. As expected, the skeleton warrior, butcher, and the other summoned creatures were each held back by a yellow turban strongman. The yellow earth fist smashed into them, greatly reducing the speed of the 2 summoned creatures. They couldn't keep up with Zhang Jiao at all. The 2 additional yellow turban strongmen floated toward Bai Xiaowen and Lan Jiazi. Facing Zhang Jiao, Bai Xiaowen's undead summoned creatures were greatly restrained. He didn't even dare to summon the demon lady or let the shadow assassin join in the focus fire. Otherwise, they would die if they encountered Zhang Jiao's thunder technique. Fortunately, Bai Xiaowen still had the awakened Wrath Claw. The Wrath Claw's 4 claws stirred up the wind as it dashed over. It circled Zhang Jiao rapidly and swung its claws one after another. Finally, Zhang Jiao's 6-6 armor shield was broken, and his HP began to drop slowly. Due to the damage reduction from the power of the yellow sky, mastery, his HP didn't drop too quickly. However, the Wrath Claw was not only agile but also strong. Its continuous claw attacks forced Zhang Jiao to constantly dodge. Although he had a lot of skills, there seemed to be a lot of restrictions when he used them. He couldn't continuously use other spells. Zhang Jiao waved his hand and ordered the 2 yellow turban strongmen to turn around and try to hold back the Wrath Claw. Bai Xiaowen raised his hand. The 4-colored talisman in his palm flashed and finally turned into a red talisman. A red light drilled into the Wrathclaw's body, causing its body to expand again. It ignored the yellow turban strongmen's slowing and chased after Zhang Jiao, biting and gnawing. You actually know the talisman I passed down? And you use it so skillfully. Zhang Jiao looked at Bai Xiaowen in disbelief. Lan Jiazi also had a puzzled look on his face. Bai Xiaowen received a notification. You have received a clue to the awakening skill of the combat skill, Talisman Switch. Detected that your advanced meditation has reached level 10. You have met the initial conditions to activate the awakening skill. Please try to kill Zhang Jiao and ensure that your final combat evaluation is not lower than rank A. You have received a further clue to the awakening skill. Bai Xiaowen frowned slightly. Originally, I wanted to consider the awakening skill after I became the leader of an organization and had almost unlimited time to stay. But now, it seems that Zhang Jiao is the target of the awakening skill. Since he had discovered a clue to the mission, Bai Xiaowen began to consider the feasibility of completing it. Killing Zhang Jiao is imperative. Zhang Jiao is a level 10 lord. He's probably the strongest lord among all the lords. As long as I don't use the winged cavalry to surround him, his final combat evaluation will not be lower than rank A. However, if I can't use the winged cavalry to surround him, I'll have to use more methods. Chapter 12-17. Seeing that Bai Xiaowen didn't answer, Zhang Jiao snorted and didn't ask any more questions. In the face of the Wrathclaw's gnawing, Zhang Jiao tapped his pearwood staff, and the dried bark fell off, revealing a wooden sword. He took a deep breath, brushed the blade with one hand, and pointed at the Wrathclaw. Go! A green light shot out from the wooden sword, and the red runes on the Wrathclaw's body disappeared without a trace. Even the Wrathclaw itself was rooted to the spot, unable to move. Bai Xiaowen quickly received a notification that this was another one of Zhang Jiao's skills, Sword Seal. What he had just used was the Demon Sealing Sword Seal. Without a doubt, this was a sealing skill with an 8-point priority, which was why it was able to suppress Bai Xiaowen's Wrath Talisman. However, after using the Demon Sealing Sword Seal, Zhang Jiao coughed violently, and dark red blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. A -300 damage number appeared above his head. Lan Jiazi said, "Those who go against the heavens will be punished by the heavens." Senior Zhang Jiao, you're a genius in cultivation. Why are you still so stubborn? Shut up. Zhang Jiao roared, but he didn't have the strength to use Sword Seal again. Even the 4 yellow turban strongmen turned into yellow mist and disappeared. Gather, Bai Xiaowen ordered in the team channel. The mournful sound of the bamboo flute rang out once more. Qiao Rui finally recovered and played the soul rhythm once more. Li Shi had already killed 2 of the Yellow Turban Army's generals. Even with Zhang Jiao's wolf curse, the leaderless Yellow Turban Army was no match for the elite winged cavalry with superior equipment. Not to mention, there was also the Yuzhou soldiers led by Jiao Tan attacking from both inside and outside. Bai Yujing neighed, and Cecilia galloped over. Li Shi's figure was like a shooting star, and after a few leaps and bounds, he arrived at Bai Xiaowen's side. Han Su had been waving his wrench to beat up the Yellow Turban Army, but after receiving the order to gather, he rushed over with large strides. His damage reduction ability mainly came from physical damage reduction brought by his armor. Against a powerful lord like Zhang Jiao, he didn't have much room to use. But now that Zhang Jiao had used more than half of his abilities, it was a good opportunity for Han Su to get some more contribution points. Fortunately, he could get some bonus points in the process of unification. There was no doubt that killing Zhang Jiao would bring him a considerable amount of war contribution points. This was because Zhang Jiao had brought about the end of the Han dynasty. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this was the beginning of the 3 kingdoms. He alone was an era. Team White Phoenix. Surround Zhang Jiao. Kill him while he's weak. By the time Zhang Jiao recovered from the recoil, he had already taken a wave of attacks from Team White Phoenix and lost over 1,000 HP. How dare you, coward! Zhang Jiao straightened his back again and raised his arms abruptly. Spread out. Keep a distance of 100 meters. If you feel danger, use your return scroll immediately. Bai Xiaowen said hurriedly. He controlled Wrathclaw, Butcher, and Skeleton Warrior to gather with the remaining 5 Necromancer archers. Lightning spell, Yellow Lightning Pool. With a loud crack, a blinding flash of lightning appeared again. As expected, Zhang Jiao's targets were Wrathclaw, Butcher, and Skeleton Warrior. The reason was simple. This area had the most enemies. Killing them would yield the most benefits. The other members of Team White Phoenix were scattered. The Yellow Lightning Pool could only hit one of them. It felt like an anti-aircraft gun hitting a mosquito. The benefits of this attack were extremely high. The Skeleton Warrior and the 5 Necromancer archers were all turned into fine bone powder. Although Butcher's skin was thick, he was charred on the outside and tender on the inside. Needless to say, his entire body was charred black. There was also a huge smoking wound on his abdomen. The organs inside were all charred black. Wrathclaw's fur stood on end, almost turning into a huge fluffy ball of fur. Fortunately, it was not an undead and did not receive additional damage from Evil Breaker. With life sharing with Bai Xiaowen, the latter had activated the equipment's additional skill, Magic Cloud Shield. He took the hit without hesitation and his HP was still relatively healthy. Of course, Wrathclaw's runic armor shield was also activated. Apparently, Zhang Jiao had consumed a lot of energy. He was panting heavily. Lan Jiazi maintained the suppression of Zhang Jiao with his 3-foot-long Nanhua wooden sword and said with difficulty, "Quick, don't give Zhang Jiao a chance to breathe." "Counterattack," Bai Xiaowen said in a low voice. He raised his hand at Wrathclaw and activated Symbiosis. At this time, Bai Xiaowen's strength had risen to almost 100 points under the effect of the Pain Ring's ability, Pain Potential. After lending 50% of his strength to Wrathclaw, Wrathclaw's strength also soared, surpassing 100 points. Bai Xiaowen switched to the Desert Eagle, and with a flash of red light, he activated Blood Rage. His spear shot towards Zhang Jiao with a powerful force. Then, he activated Rapid Fire Mode. The muzzle of his gun spewed bullets continuously, and all 3 Terror Knights were summoned. Li Shi switched to the Viper's Jaw dagger set and activated all the additional skills of the 2 accessories. Then, he activated his ultimate skill, Unparalleled Ghost. His body was like a ghost, dancing around Zhang Jiao. Viper's Jaw's Wind Fury was activated continuously. Li Shi seemed to have grown 2 more arms, and his attacks were swift and unstoppable. Wrathclaw, Terror Knights, Delifa, all of them launched a fierce attack. Scram! Zhang Jiao suddenly raised his hands. Lightning Art, Negative Ring. A dazzling ring of lightning suddenly spread out, and all the enemies in close range were hit by a powerful repulsive force. They were sent flying and repulsed by the powerful force. Li Shi's body was nimble. Relying on his extremely fast reaction speed and powerful combat instincts, he performed a series of amazing maneuvers. Invincible Slash was activated. The first slash was far away, while the second slash was close. It passed through the spreading trajectory of the negative ring without affecting the damage output at all. Wrathclaw was pushed away. After rolling a few times on the ground, it shook its head and howled at the sky. Then, it suddenly pounced on Zhang Jiao and activated its ultimate skill to suppress him. Zhang Jiao saw how powerful this pounce was. He suddenly raised his wooden sword while coughing and formed a seal. Level 4 Mighty God's Decree. Black Tortoise of the North, conquer for me. Sword Seal, Black Tortoise Seal. An illusory figure with the body of a tortoise and the tail of a snake fell. Wrathclaw's ultimate skill was forcibly interrupted. Its 4 claws were stretched out as if the illusory figure of the black tortoise was immensely heavy. Continuous damage values appeared on top of Wrathclaw's head. However, Zhang Jiao's resistance was already at an impasse. Li Shi's insane melee damage output aside, Bai Xiaowen's long-range damage output was not to be underestimated. Occasionally, Bloodlust would trigger, and each hit would deal 300 true damage. Finally, Zhang Jiao's HP was reduced to a sliver. Yellow sky. Yellow sky. Yellow sky. Zhang Jiao roared at the sky. Spiritual realm rule notification, Zhang Jiao's invincible skill is about to be activated. Chapter 12:18. Bai Xiaowen felt his scalp go numb again. He glanced at his left wrist. Fortunately, the bracelet of misfortune showed a serious face. Spread out. Run as far as you can. Bai Xiaowen shouted. He did not forget to summon the undead fiend arcane master and cast ghost path at Zhang Jiao. He wanted to interrupt Zhang Jiao's peerless skill. It was not realistic to take advantage of this opportunity to kill Zhang Jiao. Although it was only a sliver of HP, Zhang Jiao had 3000 HP. This sliver of HP was close to 300. However, Bai Xiaowen quickly received a notification that Zhang Jiao was immune to control effects with a priority of 9 and below during the charging period of the peerless skill. The control effect would be removed after the skill was successfully activated. The members of White Phoenix scattered in all directions. Cecilia was already far away, so she ran the fastest. Hansu used assist and chased after her in a flash of white light. He was not slow at all. Qiao Rui and Bai Xiaowen were long-range attackers, so they were far away from Zhang Jiao. Li Shi ran as fast as he could, but because his invincible slash had not recovered, he was the slowest. Bai Xiaowen activated, drag. In the blink of an eye, Li Shi was dragged more than 100 meters away. Bai Xiaowen did not forget about Lanjiazi and shouted in the team channel. Hansu reacted and threw out an anchor chain that wrapped around Lanjiazi's waist. Lanjiazi did not resist and was dragged away. Boom! Zhang Jiao's peerless skill finally exploded. He raised his hands and his 10 fingers were like hooks. It was as if he had grabbed the invisible sky and pulled it down with all his might. Peerless skill, the fall of the heavens. Bai Xiaowen, who was running, suddenly felt the soles of his feet go weak. The sky and earth were spinning. At this moment, it was as if the earth had become the sky, and the sky had become the earth. He felt his head become heavy and his feet become light as he fell towards the original sky. Not only Bai Xiaowen, but the other members of Team White Phoenix, the summoned creatures, and even Lanjiazi were also experiencing this strange phenomenon of falling from the sky. Not good, this is a large-scale gravity reversal. This move will first reverse the gravity of the surrounding enemies and throw them into the air. Then, the second effect will be to restore the gravity and make the enemies in the air free fall. Bai Xiaowen was shocked. Zhang Jiao's move was beyond his knowledge. It was many times stronger than the average throwing technique. There was no need for a strength judgment or any other judgment. It was simply and crudely reversing gravity and throwing the enemy into the sky. Then, gravity would return to normal and the enemy would fall to their death. Don't think that you'll be fine just because you have a flying device or a device to slow your descent. At this moment, everyone's bodies were surrounded by a green light. Clearly, they were locked down by Zhang Jiao's magic and couldn't move at all. It was similar to being hit by the knockback effect and having the enemy's skill force pour into their bodies. They couldn't react to the subsequent freefall. The Awakened had a physique that was dozens of times stronger than ordinary people. They could freefall from tens or hundreds of meters in the air without falling to their deaths. But what about 500 meters in the air? What about 1,000 meters in the air? No one had tried it before, but the results wouldn't be good. He couldn't let Zhang Jiao continue to maintain his unparalleled skill, overturning the heavens. In an instant, many thoughts flashed through Bai Xiaowen's mind. However, it only took him less than 0.1 seconds to immediately react. Misfortune bracelet, seal fate. The bracelet on Bai Xiaowen's left wrist flashed and brought him 9 points of priority immunity. The green Taoist light that enveloped his body suddenly dispersed and he regained his ability to move. Then, he directly used a large-scale deterrence. This was the simplest and fastest method. Zhang Jiao was maintaining the downward motion of his hands, trying his best to make these hateful enemies fly higher. Unexpectedly, the sudden deterrence caused his body to stiffen abruptly. The green light that lingered between his hands also dissipated instantly. Swoosh 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 swoosh. The members of the White Phoenix team, the summon creatures, and the Langiazzi fell from the sky like dumplings. Fortunately, it only took a short time. They were thrown no higher than 10 meters, so falling down wasn't a big deal. Moreover, after Zhang Jiao's unparalleled skill was interrupted, everyone regained their ability to move in the air and could land in a relatively comfortable position. Li Shi, who was the most agile, even dashed forward as soon as he landed and pounced on Zhang Jiao. No need. Bai Xiaowen clearly saw that Zhang Jiao had suffered another 300 points of true damage. His HP seemed to be left with a symbolic 1 point, but in reality, it was already negative. In reality, he was already dead. Now, it was just a segment that was similar to a cut scene. Li Shi stopped in his tracks. Zhang Jiao vomited blood and sat cross-legged on the ground. He didn't look at the others. Instead, he looked up at the sky and muttered, "The Son of Heaven is muddle-headed, but Jihuan has a spirit. Obtain 3 scrolls, named Taiping. Enlighten the world, enlighten all living beings." Not yet exhausted, praying for the Star Lantern. The Han Dynasty overturned, the world became one. Why did the heavens treat me so poorly? All things are copper, burning in the furnace fire. Pity the people of my world, so much suffering. Note, the last sentence was quoted from Jin Yang's Heaven Sword and Dragon Saber. After Zhang Jiao finished reciting, he took a deep breath and raised his voice, "The heavens die, the yellow heavens take their place. The heavens die, the yellow heavens take their place." After reciting it 3 times, he finally breathed his last and died. The 5 members of the White Phoenix team looked at each other, feeling as if they had just survived a disaster. Then, a long string of notifications flew in. You participated in the killing of the leader of the Yellow Turban Army, virtuous teacher Zhang Jiao. The Yellow Turban Army has been eliminated and has withdrawn from the war to unify the world. Your reputation with various neutral factions in the 3 kingdoms has increased by 1 level, but it will not exceed revered, takes effect after hearing of this incident. Emperor Xian of Han, Lu Xie's favorability towards you has greatly increased. Current level, familiar, takes effect after hearing of this incident. Governor of Jingzhou, Lu Biao's favorability towards you has increased. Governor of Liangzhou, Ma Ting's favorability towards you has increased. Bai Xiaowen was a bit surprised. He hurriedly checked. Does the increase in reputation with neutral factions by 1 level stack with Son of Heaven Mian Feng's initial revered reputation? The spiritual realm's precepts prompted. Stack. Bai Xiaowen was a bit confused. Check my reputation with various neutral factions. A series of reverence reputation points appeared. Of course, there was a takes effect after hearing of this incident at the back. But this was already enough. Given the speed at which news spread in the 3 kingdoms, it would definitely spread throughout the world within 10 days. The success of this battle would shock the world. Of course, shock was just shock. It only increased the reputation of the 5 members of the White Phoenix team in the 13 prefectures. The other feudal lords might not necessarily approve of the strength of the second son of the Yuan family and his subordinates. In the eyes of the feudal lords, Zhang Jiao was just at the end of his rope. No matter who caught him, it would be a great achievement. The second son of the Yuan family was just lucky to get the credit. It did not prove how strong he was. From the battle report, Jiao Tan and Zhang Jiao led 5,000 soldiers in the front while Yuan Shi led 600 winged cavalry behind them. With such a strong military force, it was not surprising that they were able to destroy Zhang Jiao's 2,000 defeated troops. But Bai Xiaowen did not care about this. He was sure that the increase in reputation from killing Zhang Jiao would definitely affect the final calculation of the Great Unification contribution. This was already enough. After all, they had destroyed an entire camp. As for the remaining forces of the Yellow Turban Army, such as Zhang Yan's Black Mountain Bandits, they were not considered by the rules of the spiritual realm. Under the rules of the spiritual realm, the Yellow Turban army camp that had lost Zhang Jiao had lost the right to compete for the fate of the world. It had become a small, insignificant force. Also, Chapter 12-19. His teammates also understood that eliminating Zhang Jiao's faction meant a high contribution to the unification process. After receiving the notification, they all smiled happily. A dark gold treasure chest appeared on top of Zhang Jiao's corpse. It was shining with a purple light and looked more luxurious than ordinary dark gold treasure chests. Bai Xiaowen took 2 steps forward and scooped it up. However, this was not the end. Lan Jiazi bowed to Han Su. "Thank you for saving me, General." Han Su's face turned slightly red. Fortunately, it was dark and could not be seen. He could not say that it was Bai Xiaowen who asked him to do so in the team channel. He could only wave his hand and say honestly, "No need to thank me. I didn't manage to save you." Zhang Jiao's last peerless skill, the Fall of the Heavens, covered a large area. Even Han Su was caught in it. Of course, Lan Jiazi, who he rescued with the waist-wrapping anchor chain, could not escape it. Bai Xiaowen complained in his heart, "Old Han, you are too honest." Lan Jiazi was slightly moved. He said to Han Su, "General, you are a sincere gentleman. Although you did not succeed in rescuing me, your kind intentions are rare. I still admire you." After saying that, Lan Jiazi took out a silk scroll from his sleeve and handed it to Han Su. "I saw that what you have learned is all about defending against the enemy. In this book, there are some Taoist methods to strengthen the body. It may be beneficial for you on the battlefield." Han Su was stunned. He did not expect such a good thing to happen to him. His hesitation made Lan Jiazi misunderstand that he did not want to accept it. Lan Jiazi hurriedly said, "General, please don't refuse. As a Taoist, the most taboo thing for us is to be concerned. If you refuse to accept it, it will make things difficult for me." Han Su hurriedly took it. "Thank you, Taoist." Lan Jiazi smiled and said, "Excuse me," before patting Han Su's lower abdomen. Han Su was caught off guard and took 2 steps back. He felt a warm feeling in his lower abdomen, as if there was a stream of hot air lingering in it. Lan Jiazi took out a purple wooden box from his sleeve and handed it to Han Su. "General, it's best that you swallow this pill within 3 days and then cultivate diligently. If we delay, our true qi will be exhausted, and it will be difficult for us to succeed." Lan Jiazi summoned the 3-inch wooden sword of Nanhua the Immortal and said to Zhang Jiao's corpse, "The mortal affairs are finally over." Ahem. Bai Xiaowen could not hold it in any longer. This Taoist priest was really blind. Han Su had only stepped out to save him, but when he failed, he was rewarded with secret techniques, pills, and other services. Bai Xiaowen's sealed fate and deterrence had directly broken Zhang Jiao's skill and saved Lan Jiazi's life. How could he not express his gratitude? Seeing that Lan Jiazi did not respond, Bai Xiaowen felt helpless. He wanted to ask for some benefits, but as the second son of the Yuan family and the provincial governor of Yuzhou, he had to be more reserved, right? At this moment, Han Su had already shared the scroll and the wooden box of pills in the team channel. Secret of the Gang Stomping Steps, special item, exclusive to you. Teaches you the skills of Gang Qi. Gang Qi is a special skill and does not occupy the skill slot. Dear Fetus Meridian Opening Pill, special item, exclusive to you. Relaxes your meridians and promotes blood circulation. He had not mastered it yet, so he could not see the effects of Gang Qi. Reserve my ass. It's so good. Seeing the word special skill, Bai Xiaowen immediately threw his previous thoughts to the back of his mind. He took 2 steps forward and stopped Lan Jiazi, revealing an extremely sincere smile. Taoist priest, I also saved you just now. Bai Xiaowen felt that at this moment, his charm had reached its peak. Lan Jiazi looked at Bai Xiaowen strangely. Young master, weren't you saving yourself? Oh, Bai Xiaowen understood. It turned out that this Taoist priest Lanjiatsi cared about the intention and not the results. Han Su had taken the initiative to save Lanjiatsi. Although he did not succeed, he still received Lanjiatsi's gratitude. Bai Xiaowen did not take the initiative to save Lanjiatsi. He had saved everyone else while he was saving himself. Although he had saved Lanjiatsi, he did not receive his gratitude. Was Lang Yazi's view right? It was hard to say. At least from Bai Xiaowen's point of view, he wanted to clench his teeth and cross out 100 times. However, Taoist cultivators sought to be free of worries. Everything they did was based on their own conscience, regardless of whether it was right or wrong. If he felt that he was worried about Han Su, he would thank him with a secret. If he felt that he was not worried about Bai Xiaowen, he would not thank him. Bai Xiaowen's thoughts turned quickly. He thought through this point and shook his head with a smile. Taoist priest, you're really open-minded. Lanjiatsi cupped his hands and thanked him. Young master, you flatter me. 3 silk scrolls suddenly flew out from Zhang Jiao's corpse, emitting a faint green light. The 3-inch wooden sword in Lanjiatsi's hand flew over and emitted a green light, enveloping the 3 scrolls. What's this? Bai Xiaowen asked curiously. Lanjiatsi said, these 3 scrolls are called the Key to Peace. They were originally passed down to Zhang Jiao by Uncle Master Nanhua. Now that Zhang Jiao is dead, Uncle Master Nanhua will naturally take them back. An idea suddenly flashed through Bai Xiaowen's mind. He moved faster than he thought and took out an item from his storage space. The compulsory enlistment edict. It was the key to peace. The spiritual realm's rules prompted him. Do you want to consume the special item, the compulsory enlistment edict, to obtain the ownership of the ownerless key to peace? Yes. Bai Xiaowen did not hesitate. He was ecstatic. Originally, he only wanted to give it a try. He did not expect that after Zhang Jiao's death, the key to peace would really become an ownerless item. Swoosh! The green light on the key to peace disappeared. It turned into a stream of light and flew into Bai Xiaowen's hand. Bai Xiaowen reacted quickly and put it into his storage space. Compared to the Aaron dimension, the compulsory enlistment edict was taken by Prince Richard. Losing its target, Elder Nanhua's 3-inch wooden sword seemed to be at a loss. It flew around Bai Xiaowen 3 times and then flew into the southern sky with a whoosh. Finally, it turned into a green stream of light and disappeared into the clouds. This. Lang Yazi was dumbfounded. JPG. Taoist priest, it seems that these 3 scrolls are fated to be mine. Bai Xiaowen said with a smile, you don't have any objections, right? In the White Phoenix team's internal channel, everyone was in a frenzy. Li Shi, team channel awesome. It's so worth it. If Taoist priest has any objections, we'll kill him. Cecilia, team channel he looks much weaker than Zhang Jiao. Xiao Rui, team channel calm down. Captain, think of a way out first. This Lanjiatsi might be easy to deal with, but there are other Taoist masters like Nanhua and Zhuaxi behind him. They are probably stronger than Zhang Jiao. What if they come to us? Bai Xiaowen, team channel haha. Don't worry. We've reached the requirements for the first phase of the main mission and can submit it at any time. We can leave at any time. This is our way out. Also, according to my secret observation in the past 2 days, Lanjiatsi's Taoist faction seems to be very particular about fate and doesn't like to interfere with worldly affairs. They probably won't turn against me because of the heavenly books. Han Su was a bit embarrassed. He lowered his head and didn't say anything. After a pause, Bai Xiaowen continued in the team channel, the 3 scrolls of heavenly books probably don't have any practical use for Elder Nanhua. Otherwise, Zhang Jiao wouldn't have taken them back. I'm guessing that Elder Nanhua belongs to the background of this world and won't appear. Even if he does come, I have the rights to the 3 scrolls of heavenly books. I can negotiate with him. At this point, Bai Xiaowen narrowed his eyes and smiled. For example, the wordless jade scroll. It's a mysterious item that 4th uncle of the Fong family couldn't decipher even after visiting dozens of planes. It's a good opportunity to test Elder Nanhua. Chapter 12:20. Lanjiatzi smiled bitterly and said, "Young master, I'm afraid that you used some special item to snatch the 3 heavenly tomes." Bai Xiaowen shook his head. "How can you call it snatching when it's fate?" Lanjiatzi sighed. "Young master, if you let me go back, how am I going to report to my master?" Bai Xiaowen could feel that the mysterious aura surrounding Lanjiatzi had disappeared, perhaps because the 3-inch wooden sword had left his body. He could already sense Lanjiatzi's strength. In terms of the strength of his psionic particles, he was about the level of a rare leader. Bai Xiaowen used insight. This time, there were no more obstacles and he easily obtained Lanjiatzi's information. Guxian, leader level 9, race, humanoid/human, class, alchemist, attributes, STR40, DX32, STR60, INT92, skill 1, alchemy. Guxian is good at gathering spiritual herbs and refining pills with different effects. Skill 2, astral steps combat technique, passive, all damage received by Guxian is reduced by 20%. Active activation of astral steps combat technique will greatly increase Guxian's movement speed and immunity to control skills below priority, 7. Skill 3? Skill 4? Skill 5, 9 Core Golden Elixir Sutra, advanced receives 700 extra HP and 40% toughness. All damage received is reduced by 20%. So it's Guxian. Bai Xiaowen looked at Lanjiatzi in a different light. This was a powerful backer. Right now, Guxian was still inconspicuous, but his potential was incredible. Bai Xiaowen had prepared information on the Taoist masters of the ancient Huaxia dimension. Guxian was one of them. Guxian, also known as Old Man Gu, was originally from Langia. He later moved to Danyang and was the founder of the Lingbao sect. He was regarded as one of the 4 heavenly masters by some Taoist sects in the future, on par with people like Zhang Daoling. Guxian's great-grandson, Gu Hong, was even more widely known in the later generations. His book, Biopuzi, was almost a must-read classic for Taoist cultivators. This Lanjiatzi. No, this Lord Gu can't be treated lightly. Note, don't get me wrong, the master here is the second word. Bai Xiaowen's thoughts quickly changed, and his attitude became much more proper. Hearing Guxian fretting over how to report to his master, Bai Xiaowen leaned over and chuckled. Taoist priest, I remember that when you came, you only said that you were following your master's orders to get rid of Zhang Jiao, right? Guxian didn't know that his underwear had been seen through by Bai Xiaowen. He nodded and said, yes. Bai Xiaowen laughed and said, then it's settled. Your master gave you the task of getting rid of Zhang Jiao. Now that Zhang Jiao is dead, why can't you report to your master? As for the 3 heavenly tomes, it was Nanhua Old Deity who wanted to take them back. He was careless and didn't take them back. What does it have to do with you? Guxian was stunned. He wanted to say something, but felt that Bai Xiaowen seemed to make a lot of sense. Guxian changed his mind and persuaded, but I personally think that the heavenly tomes are the source of disaster to the moral world. Zhang Jiao will bring disaster to the world if he gets his hands on them. Young master, you have a noble background and will be a minister in the future. Why? Bai Xiaowen laughed and said, you must have seen that I also know some Taoist Dharma spells. You can say that I'm half a Taoist. Guxian thought of Bai Xiaowen's talisman switch and nodded. The heavenly tomes themselves are not a disaster. It's only a disaster in the hands of people with evil intentions. Bai Xiaowen said a truth that people in later generations would say, there is no good or evil in power. If it's used righteously, it's good. If it's used maliciously, it's evil. Taoist priest, how can you arbitrarily assume that the tomes of arcane will do evil in my hands just because of Zhang Jiao? Guxian looked at Bai Xiaowen and didn't say anything. Bai Xiaowen was a little embarrassed, cough. If you're still worried, I have another suggestion. Confucius once said, first I was a man, listening to his words and believing his actions. Now I'm a man, listening to his words and observing his actions. Bai Xiaowen quoted the classics to increase his persuasiveness. If you don't believe me, why don't you wait and see if I'll use the heavenly tomes to do evil? Seeing that Gu Xian was silent, Bai Xiaowen pulled him aside and whispered, Taoist, I'm not a stingy person. These 3 heavenly tomes, we can study them together. Look at Zhang Jiao's powerful heavenly knowledge in Taoist magic arts. Didn't he learn them from the heavenly tomes? Gu Xian shook his head and said, My master, Mr. Crowhorn, said that Zhang Jiao's powerful strength was mainly because he used the 7-star lamp to prolong his life. He was lucky enough to succeed. After he passed the tribulation of life and death, his understanding of Taoist magic reached a new level, even to the point where heaven and earth couldn't tolerate it. Bai Xiaowen suddenly understood, no wonder Zhang Jiao is so powerful. The Edict, Thunder, Talisman, and Sword Seal, these 4 Taoist magic arts are all integrated into a system. He's like a master. Gu Xian said, Zhang Jiao's ability is not only these 4, but also the art of praying. Praying? Bai Xiaowen asked curiously, what kind of magic art is this? Why didn't he use it? Gu Xian said, the art of praying is the creation of heaven. It uses human power to forcibly change the operation of heaven and earth. For example, snow in June, heavy rain in the dry season, or wind in the southeast during winter. On a deeper level, it's the star lamp that can prolong life and forcibly change one's lifespan. After Zhang Jiao used the star lamp to prolong his life, he was envied by heaven. As the saying goes, fortune and misfortune come hand in hand. Although he peeped into a deeper realm of Taoist magic, he also suffered a backlash and his strength was greatly reduced. Bai Xiaowen finally understood. No wonder Zhang Jiao was so difficult to fight. He had cheated. This strength was probably beyond the level of an awakened. The art of praying should be Zhang Jiao's 5th skill system. However, he was already envied by heaven. He kept vomiting blood when he used other series of Taoist magic arts, so he didn't dare to use the art of praying. Moreover, the art of praying was mainly used to change the weather of a large area. It often had a miraculous effect when used in a large army battle, but it was useless in such a small-scale battle. Bai Xiaowen continued to persuade Gu Xian, Taoist, although we can't reach the level of Zhang Jiao, as the saying goes, stones from other mountains can be used to polish jade. It'll definitely be beneficial to what we've learned. Gu Xian seemed to be persuaded, but he still hesitated. But I still have to report to Master that Zhang Jiao is dead. Oh, why are you so pedantic? The news of Zhang Jiao's death will definitely spread all over the world. There's no need for you to report. Bai Xiaowen said. Gu Xian nodded in realization. That's true. So, just be straightforward and come back to Yuzhou with me. On the one hand, you'll see if I'll use the heavenly book to do evil. On the other hand, you'll see what's written in the heavenly book. Bai Xiaowen held Gu Xian's hand affectionately. Don't get me wrong. Holding hands was a normal gesture of intimacy between men in the Three Kingdoms era. When a charming monarch did this, it was easy for his subordinates to feel the warmth of spring. Gu Xian calmly pulled his hand out. Okay, I'll stay here for a few days. Chapter 12:21. After Zhang Jiao's death, the remnants of the Yellow Turban army seemed to have been stripped of their bones. They could no longer hold on. Bai Xiaowen's words, those who surrender will be spared, made the remaining several hundred Yellow Turban army soldiers put down their weapons. After inspecting the soldiers, they found that more than half of the Yuzhou army's 5,000 men had been killed. Bai Xiaowen's favorite winged cavalry had also lost more than 100 men. This was all money. Bai Xiaowen sighed and ordered the soldiers to clean up the battlefield. Fortunately, the dead winged cavalry could be recovered. If they were retrained, they would be able to quickly replenish their numbers. Of course, the compensation for the winged cavalry would cost a lot of money. Bai Xiaowen wasn't stingy about it. Now that the winged cavalry had been baptized by battle, they were veterans of the battlefield and could adapt quickly. The Yellow Turban army didn't have much money, food, and metal equipment. this defeated army had been barely able to survive by relying on Guakai's smuggling. It was already good enough that they had enough to eat, so they didn't have much food left. However, it was good enough that they had obtained several hundred young soldiers who had been through hundreds of battles. Escort all the supplies we obtained to the Yuzhou treasury. I won't take a single one, Bai Xiaowen said. Leave the captives to General Bai Sanyang's winged cavalry. Don't let anything happen to them. Yes, sir, Cecilia immediately replied. Bai Xiaowen glanced at the two Yuzhou generals. They lowered their heads in silence at Bai Xiaowen's assignment. In fact, Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan were both nervous. They had lost more than half of their 5,000 men in this battle. If not for the sudden appearance of Yuan Shi and his winged cavalry, they probably wouldn't have survived. As for the credit, the one who killed Zhang Jiao was Yuan Shi. Even though they were Yuan Shao's subordinates, they didn't dare to steal the credit from him. Bai Xiaowen didn't need to harbor any ill intentions. As long as he reported the truth, the two generals would definitely be punished. They might even be labeled as incompetent and mediocre. Based on how cold-blooded General Yuan Shao treated his subordinates, Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan felt that they might die. Jiao Tan, Zhang Nan, come here, Bai Xiaowen said. The two generals looked at each other and silently walked in front of Bai Xiaowen. Jiao Tan was the first to kneel on one knee. Zhang Nan glanced at him and quickly followed suit. Jiao De said, "This general congratulates young master on obtaining such a great merit. Your name will shake the world." Zhang Nan. Me too. Jiao De replied, "This general has roughly read poetry and books, but I know the two words loyalty and righteousness. If young master doesn't abandon me, Jiao Tan is willing to follow young master in the future and follow only young master's lead." Zhang Nan. Me too. Jiao De said, "This general did not expect the enemy to be so ferocious. We have suffered heavy losses in this battle. Young master, please save us." Zhang Nan, eyes brimming with tears. Me too. Bai Xiaowen originally wanted to waste his breath, but he did not expect these two military generals to be so tactful. He didn't know if it was the effect of his high charm or the reputation bonus from killing Zhang Jiao, but it was starting to show. In any case, it was a good thing that the two Yuzhou military generals were kowtowing. Since you know what's good for you, then there's no need to beat them up. Bai Xiaowen coughed and went forward to help them up. "General Jiao, General Zhang, please rise. How can there be an invincible general in the world? The two generals were at fault in this battle, but it's not all your fault. You brought too few soldiers." Bai Xiaowen sighed. As the saying goes, even a lion will use all its strength to catch a rabbit. When I found out about the yellow turban thieves, I concluded that they had something to rely on. I wanted to let you bring more troops and succeed in one battle, but unfortunately. Bai Xiaowen didn't continue. He seemed to be in a difficult position. Jiao Tan and Zhang Nan naturally knew that it was an order from the Guandu camp for them to bring 5,000 troops. Second young master was a venerable, so he naturally could not point out his father's fault. Bai Xiaowen continued, "Because I was worried about the two generals and the many Yuzhou soldiers, I ordered General Bai Sanyang to lead the newly formed winged cavalry to the rear. If the two generals can eliminate the bandits, that would be the best. I don't need to go against my father's orders and send troops on my own." Jiao Tan was moved to tears and knelt down to thank him again. "The two of us can live because of young master's consideration." Zhang Nan quickly knelt down and kowed out as well. Bai Xiaowen helped the two up again and encouraged them, "Generals, don't lose your spirit because of this battle. In this chaotic world, a real man should carry a 3-foot sword and make great contributions. Wouldn't it be great to have a wife and children? If Yuan Shi can get the help of the two generals, great things can be expected." The two swore their loyalty again. As their superior and the biggest contributor to this battle, Bai Xiaowen wanted to help them cover up their mistakes. It was actually very simple. As long as he wrote a report to Guandu and gave them some of the credit for defeating Zhang Jiao, it would be enough. At this point, Bai Xiaowen could be considered to have completely grasped the military power of Yuzhou. As for the financial power, there was still the restriction of chief historian Zhao Rong. However, Bai Xiaowen had already tried to get in touch with Lu He through Yan Rou. If he could get Lui's loyalty, then it would be easy to make Zhao Rong a mere figurehead. The civil officials and generals of these plain natives were all leaders. The more he recruited, the better. Although he could not use them to help fight the boss, the natives' participation in the battle would reduce the reward. Being able to mobilize so many native leaders for his own use meant that the Awaken's ability to cause trouble in this plane would be stronger. Of course, he would be able to obtain more benefits. In particular, it was related to the status of the leader of a faction. Generally, the leader of a small faction would not be allowed to stay for almost an unlimited amount of time. Only those who had as many strategists and as many valiant generals under their command, who could make the entire dimension tremble with a stomp of their feet, could be considered the leader of a faction force. Bai Xiaowen's overall plan was basically completed, and he was very satisfied. After cleaning up the battlefield, Bai Xiaowen ordered people to put Zhang Jiao's body in a coffin and led the troops to the nearest city, Xiangping City, to rest for a while. After seeing the recruitment notice, a considerable number of people from the big and small families in the 4 counties of Liaodong rushed over to seek refuge because of the Yuan family's reputation. Bai Xiaowen received this group of people. When the news that Bai Xiaowen killed Zhang Jiao was made public, this group of family representatives was greatly shocked and praised Bai Xiaowen's achievements. It was believed that after this news spread, the other family members in the 4 counties of Liaodong who were observing the situation would also quickly rush over to seek refuge with Bai Xiaowen. This was the influence brought about by a high reputation. However, Bai Xiaowen also received an unexpected piece of news. Guokai, who was in prison, had heard the news of Zhang Jiao's death from somewhere and actually committed suicide. Although he was a bandit, he was also a loyal person. Give him a proper burial, Bai Xiaowen said. He sighed and thought of the poem Zhang Jiao recited before his death. The Han dynasty collapsed, and the world became one. Why did the heavens treat me so badly? Zhang Jiao started the Yellow Turban Rebellion and fought against the Great Han dynasty with Taoist magic. His intentions were good. He wanted to save the people from suffering and create a world of harmony. If he did not have such a noble goal, he would not have been able to recruit such a loyal follower like Guokai. Unfortunately, Zhang Jiao was a genius in cultivation, but not in military. His leadership skills were lacking. The Yellow Turban Army lacked strict military discipline. They did not fight well, and their reputation was ruined. Gradually, they lost the hearts of the people and lost the chance to fight for the world. Otherwise, Zhang Jiao would not have needed to rely on Taoist magic to go against the heavens. Of course, the most important reason was that he was born in the wrong time. The era of the 3 kingdoms was a time of great competition. There were many good officials and fierce generals. Think about it. In which era, when the Central Plains was falling apart, could it still subdue the Wuhuan in the north, the barbarians in the south, the Chan in the west, the Gaoli in the east, and other alien tribes in all places? Only the 3 kingdoms. From the moment the Eastern Han dynasty allowed the feudal lords to recruit private soldiers, Zhang Jiao's enemy was no longer just the Eastern Han dynasty but the entire world. The feudal lords were all good officials and fierce generals. If Zhang Jiao was born in another era, he might have been able to achieve great things. Bai Xiaowen did not mourn for Guokai. That would be too hypocritical. After giving the order to give Guokai a proper burial, he did not mention the matter anymore. Bai Xiaowen took another wave of money. No, to be exact, he received a batch of gold and silver from the Liaodong family. Then, he gave the order to return. He returned to Beiping City in Yuzhou with a great victory. General Yan Rou, who was guarding the city, Lu He, and chief historian Zhao Rong led the other officials of Yuzhou out of the city to welcome him. Lu He had listened to Yan Rou's words and submitted to Bai Xiaowen. Bai Xiaowen felt that it was both unexpected and reasonable. The key thing that made him feel particularly comfortable was that chief historian Zhao Rong followed Lu He closely and showed his loyalty. In this way, there was no need to spend any effort to make him a mere figurehead. Yuzhou was in his hands. It was time to open a bunch of treasure chests to celebrate. Chapter 12:22. That night, the White Phoenix squad gathered in Bai Xiaowen's study room. There was a row of treasure chests on the table. Silver light, gold light, dark gold light, an array of purple light shone on the 5 people's faces. They looked like old farmers who had a good harvest. Should we open the best or the worst first? Bai Xiaowen asked his teammates. Let's start with Zhang Jiao's. It's been a long time since I opened a treasure chest. I feel like I've accumulated some good karma. Li Shi was eager to try. Bai Xiaowen chuckled as he took Zhang Jiao's dark gold treasure chest. The final score for killing Zhang Jiao was A. If Lan Jiazi did not participate in the battle, the final score might have soared to S. Of course, Lan Jiazi also contributed. If he did not use Nanhua Sage's wooden sword to suppress Zhang Jiao's thunderbolt halo, they would have had to pay a higher price to take down Zhang Jiao. They might have had to change their strategy and lure the winged cavalry out to participate in the encirclement. If that happened, their score would still be lowered. A score meant that they had obtained the clue to Bai Xiaowen's rune switch awakening skill. However, Bai Xiaowen did not receive any further hints. He guessed that the clue to the rune switch awakening skill should be hidden in Zhang Jiao's treasure chest. After choosing to open the treasure chest, they first received 100,000 soul energy points. Then, 32 dark gold cards floated in the air. Let Shi draw all of them. We won't participate, Qiao Rui said. The other teammates did not have any objections. Oh, that's too embarrassing. Li Shi smiled as he clicked on one of the cards. Whoosh! The dark gold card flipped over, and the picture of a boot appeared. You received a piece of equipment, Cloud Boots. Cloud Boots, bound after pickup, grade, Lord, dark gold, equipment position, foot, equipment requirements, 20 strength, 20 agility, 20 stamina, 20 spirit, attributes, all attributes plus 3, movement speed plus 4%, additional skill 1, Wind Rider, passive. Your movement speed is increased by 100%. You can also glide in high places. The movement speed bonus is affected by the direction and strength of the wind. Additional skill 2, Cloud Walk. Activate the effect of Cloud Walk, allowing the wearer to run in the sky for 30 seconds. Durability, 49/50. Description, Masterly Z flies with the wind, cool and kind. Wow, dark gold equipment. Li Shi was the first to see it. He gave himself a thumbs up. Good start. This equipment seems to only increase movement speed. As for the effect of flying on the clouds, it seems that the visual effect is more important than the actual effect, Qiao Rui said. Bai Xiaowen thought to himself, Sister Qiao, you can just tell me the weapon to show off. Why make it so complicated? This equipment is pretty good. All attributes plus 3, a total of 12 attributes. It's basically worth it. The first skill, Wind Rider, gives at least a 10% movement speed bonus. When the wind is blowing, the speed will increase even more. Combined with the second skill, Cloud Walk, it's a good escape tool, Bai Xiaowen commented. Who are you giving it to? Qiao Rui asked the key question. He was the first to express his opinion. I already have gliding boots. I don't need this. I have white jade jing. Cecilia obviously didn't care for this item either. Han Su waved his hand. This pair of shoes didn't match the characteristics of his profession. Why don't you give it to Xiaowen? Li Shi said. My traveler's boots are also good gold equipment. It has the special effect of phase walk from level 4. It can ignore the collision of units and can replace the effect of cloud walk to a certain extent. Why do I need to be so fast? I'm not a melee fighter. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. You can wear it. Change out of the traveler's boots. Li Shi didn't refute. He obediently changed into the cloud walk, feeling very happy. After changing into the cloud walk, Li Shi's sprinting speed increased further. If the wind was blowing, her movement speed would soar to 244% when she activated Wrath of the Monarch. Coupled with her high dexterity, it would be easy for her to surpass White Jade Jing's speed in a short time. White Jade Jing's sprinting speed was 200 dexterity. It didn't have any other speed buffs. When dexterity reached a certain level, the speed buff would decrease. 200 dexterity didn't mean that the speed was twice as fast as 100 dexterity. It meant that it was 30% to 40% faster. Li Shi had tried it before. When her two statuses were stacked to the maximum, her dexterity exceeded 100. Coupled with Wrath of the Monarch in the original Traveler's Boots, she could be on par with White Jade Jing's speed. If she changed her Traveler's Boots to the Cloud Walk, she could definitely surpass White Jade Jing's speed. Li Shi quickly picked up a second time. This time, it was a silk book with many tiny figures on it. It looked like a secret martial arts manual. Praying Mystic Instrument, Special Item. After learning it, there is a small chance of learning a special skill, Praying Mystic Instrument. Is this a special skill book? Bai Xiaowen said. It's not a 100% chance of learning the skill, but if you can learn it, it won't occupy the skill slot. It's a small chance. Be careful, or you'll end up with nothing, Qiao Rui said. Bai Xiaowen thought for a moment. Let's keep it for now. I think the chance of learning it depends on the user. I can make a bold guess. The higher one's spirit, the higher the chance of learning it. Those who have a strong foundation in Taoist techniques will have a higher chance of learning it. If that's the case, it's best for you to study the 3 scrolls of heaven before learning the Praying Mystic Instrument, Qiao Rui said. I think so too. Bai Xiaowen took the silk book and put it away. Another quack skill. Bai Xiaowen muttered to himself. I don't want to be a quack. I crave power. I crave power. Bai Xiaowen's muttering seemed to have worked. Li Shi's third pick was a wooden sword. It looked like the wooden sword Zhang Jiao used, but it was smaller and smaller. It was only the size of a palm. Unfortunately, it wasn't a piece of equipment. It was an item. Level 4 Mighty God Sword Seal, Black Tortoise B-grade gold item. Choose a target and apply the Black Tortoise's heavy pressure to the target, causing the target to suffer 100 true damage per second. During the duration of the effect, it will continuously consume spirit. The amount of spirit consumed per second will multiply. The binding effect has a fixed priority of 8. It ignores all toughness skills below Lord Tier, including Lord Tier. Disappears after use. A B-grade gold item that can only be used once. His teammates gasped. This effect is simply amazing. Brother Jiao is indeed a man with a cheat code. Bai Xiaowen's focus was different. He was unusually excited, and his eyes shone brightly. Chapter 12:23. Dior, is this item very powerful? Cecilia asked. Bai Xiaowen nodded. Of course. Actually, you can think of this item as a dark gold treasure chest. Well, compared to a dark gold treasure chest, there are war contributions, reputation, and various advantages in expanding one's forces. I wouldn't trade it for a dark gold treasure chest. Qiao Rui also understood. The real significance of this grade B gold item is that it has an 8-point priority and ignores the Lord's toughness skill. It can lock the Lord in one place for a long time and make it a live target. It's just that the mental energy consumption increases exponentially. It's a little scary. I've already calculated. The first second has 1 point, the second has 2 points, the third has 4 points, and the fourth has 8 points. Including the mental energy stored in the blood essence stone, I should be able to last for 7 seconds. Bai Xiaowen laughed. Think about it. How precious is 7 seconds of free DPS? It's enough for us to focus our attacks and kill a lord with more than 3000 HP, as long as the opponent doesn't have an 8-point priority to remove the control. Spirit realm bosses generally did not have a way to remove the control due to their toughness skill, unlike awakened ones who had many ways to remove the control. As for Bai Xiaowen, he was not afraid of using up all his mental energy. After drinking a jar of century-old flower carving, he would be full of energy again. His teammates understood Bai Xiaowen's explanation and valued this grade B gold item even more. Bai Xiaowen thought further. In key battles, the enemy lord often played a role as a stabilizing force. With this black tortoise sword seal, he could execute a decapitation attack on the enemy lord. The strategic significance was too great. Zhang Jiao's treasure chest was drawn 3 times. However, Li Shi found a few yellowed pages at the bottom of the chest. Xiaowen, this should be your mission item, right? I can't take it, Li Shi asked. Bai Xiaowen leaned over. Talisman annotation, incomplete special item, exclusive binding. This is virtuous teacher Zhang Jiao's understanding of the Tao of incantations after reading the 2nd volume of the Great Peace Technique. It records his new achievements in the Tao of incantations. As soon as Bai Xiaowen's finger touched the incantation talisman annotation, incomplete, he received a notification from the spirit world's law. You've obtained the key item for the 2nd step of the awakening skill, Talisman Switch. Do you wish to spend a corresponding spirit crystal to activate the talisman spell to switch to the Step 3 awakening skill? Bai Xiaowen shared these notifications in the team channel. This was a new way to obtain awakening skills. He could obtain the corresponding key items without using spirit stones in advance. However, this obviously required certain conditions to be triggered. Bai Xiaowen inquired, is there a quality requirement for the spirit stones used? Spirit Realm Rule Notification, Advanced Meditation has reached level 10. Participate in the killing of Great Conjurer Zhang Jiao and obtain a combat evaluation of level A or above. These are the 2 steps of the level A+ spell symbol switch awakening skill quest. The higher the grade of spirit stones you use, the higher the difficulty of the Step 3 awakening skill quest can be activated, but it will not exceed level A+. Bai Xiaowen understood that if he used a flawless blue spirit stone, he should be able to activate the Step 3 of the awakening skill quest at the highest level A+. If he used a normal blue spirit stone, he could only activate the Step 3 of the awakening skill quest at the highest level B+. Even if the first 2 steps were level A+, it would be useless. Moreover, even if there was a higher level S spirit stone than the flawless spirit stone, the final awakening skill quest would not exceed level A+. After figuring this out, Bai Xiaowen asked his teammates for their opinions. Now, we have collected almost all the awakening skill quest samples. Of course, they are all level A. I don't know if there will be any changes in the lower level. We will consider the others when we collect normal or broken spirit stones in the future. Let me summarize the rules of the level A awakening skill quest. Needless to say, the first step is often the requirement of the corresponding combat specialty. The next 2 steps are generally to kill the associated boss or to collect the quest item. Now we have 3 flawless spirit stones, 1 green and 1 blue, corresponding to agility and spirit skills respectively. 1 purple spirit stone, corresponding to strength or spirit. My original plan was to unify the allocation of spirit stones after I became the leader of the force. This way, the awakening skill quest can be completed directly in the 3 kingdoms plane, and the chance will be much higher. But now, my spell switch has reached the last step. I am inclined to use a blue spirit stone first, so that I can increase my strength as soon as possible in a short time. Qiao Rui was the first to express his support. This is indeed the choice to maximize the combat effectiveness. It is meaningless to leave the spirit stones there to collect dust. It is better to transform them into the captain's combat effectiveness as soon as possible. This time, fighting Zhang Jiao was really thrilling. The 3 kingdoms plane is too strong, and our strength is still lacking. Bai Xiaowen said with a smile, don't be scared by Zhang Jiao. This is a lord with a cheat code, even to the point where the heavens, that is, the rules of the spiritual realm, do not tolerate it. Other lords should not be as ferocious as him. After the discussion, Bai Xiaowen used a flawless blue spirit stone and started the third step of the awakening skill quest of Spell Switch, Grade A+. The spiritual realm's rules prompted the message, the third step of the awakening skill quest has been created. Quest objective, obtain the complete annotation of the spell. This quest has no time limit or specific requirements of the plane. Bai Xiaowen frowned as he looked at the third step of the quest. There aren't many restrictions. Even if you can't complete it in the Three Kingdoms plane, you can bring it back to Earth or complete it in other planes, Li Shi said. Bai Xiaowen shook his head. There aren't many restrictions, but it also means that there are very few clues to pursue. There is no doubt that the Three Kingdoms plane is the most likely place to complete the annotation of the spell. Isn't there one in front of us? The Taoist who was tricked by the captain to come back, Qiao Rui said. Bai Xiaowen smiled. Gu Xian was Zhang Jiao's junior. Of course, he was the best candidate to complete the annotation of the spell. After that, the 5 members of the White Phoenix team opened the other gold and silver treasure chests one after another. Among them, Gong Sun Du's treasure chest was graded B, which was a pleasant surprise. The other gold treasure chests were graded C or below. After a round of drawing, the Three Kingdoms plane was indeed a high-difficulty plane. The items dropped by the normal bosses were also quite valuable. There were 1 scorching needle spear, a gold weapon with an additional flame passive. There was a chance that the spear would be imbued with the power of fire. 1 iron slashing sword, a gold weapon with a 30% armor penetration passive. It could cut through iron like mud. 1 fish scale armor, a blue quality item, Old Han scratched his butt gloomily. Several gold jewels, treasures, and miscellaneous items. What was worth mentioning was that although one of the 2 yellow turban strongman silver treasure chests was empty, the other one had dropped a strongman talisman. It was a C-grade silver item. After using it, it could summon an elite yellow turban strongman. It was a pleasant surprise. Chapter 12-24. After drawing the treasure chest, Bai Xiaowen assigned another mission. Cecilia and I will still stay in Yuzhou. We still have 20 to 30,000 strings of coins. In addition to distributing the compensation, Cecilia will continue to train the winged cavalry and fill up the quota of 800 people as soon as possible. Cecilia said, more than 100 people died in battle. I'm going to pay the most generous compensation, which will cost about 4,000 strings of coins. The remaining money and food is almost enough. I'll train the next batch of winged cavalry as soon as possible. Bai Xiaowen nodded and said, Sister Qiao, go to the Jin family in Jizhou and continue to investigate the terrain and plan the route. In this regard, we can borrow the power of the Jin family caravan. Yes, I'll write a letter. Give it to my brother-in-law, Jin Yan. He should be able to help. Qiao Rui asked, when do you plan to launch a surprise attack on Shudu? Bai Xiaowen said, when Cecilia trains all the winged cavalry to the maximum, I'll submit the first main mission. At that time, I'll refer to the second main mission and the battle report from Guandu to decide on the specific plan. Han Su had to cultivate the special aura qi as soon as possible. This opportunity could not be missed. Bai Xiaowen wrote another letter to be sent to the Guandu camp, briefly introducing the battle report of the Yellow Turbans. There were many places in the letter that were written using the spring and autumn annals, and things that should not be known by Yuan Shao were not revealed. On this letter, the names of Zhao Rong, Jiao Tan, Zhang Nan, and the others were attached. These former subordinates of Yuan Shao had now changed their allegiance to Bai Xiaowen and vowed to help the second young master become the heir. Of course, Yuan Shao did not call himself a king. It was not appropriate to call him the heir. In short, he was the heir. The next morning, Li Shi brought this letter to the Guandu camp. After arriving at Guandu, she would continue to be in charge of Tianyu and pass on frontline information, just like before. It was midwinter now, and the north wind blew from north to south. Li Shi did not ride a horse. He felt the speed increase brought by the cloud-climbing shoes that were tailwind. It was so comfortable that he could not breathe. They could easily outrun ordinary warhorses. With every rise and fall, he could glide with the wind for a certain distance. He was as powerful as the masters who were good at Qigong in the wuxiao world. Bai Xiaowen soon coincidentally met the Taoist priest Lanjiazi, also known as Guxian. Young master, the 3 scrolls of the heavenly tomes. As soon as Guxian opened his mouth, Bai Xiaowen pretended to be surprised and said, "Oh, Taoist Lanjiazi. What a coincidence, I was just about to look for you. Is there something you need from me, young master?" Guxian was confused. Of course. Bai Xiaowen took out the annotation of the spell talisman, incomplete. Some soldiers found this when they were collecting Zhang Jiao's remains. I glanced at it. This annotation seemed to be Zhang Jiao's work after he comprehended a new realm of spell symbols. It would be very beneficial to our study. Taoist priest, you also contributed to killing Zhang Jiao. I shouldn't keep this to myself, so I came to find you. Guxian was quite moved. He nodded and said, "Young master's actions are quite benevolent and gentlemanly. This humble Taoist has misunderstood young master before. Hey, Taoist priest, you may not know, but General Han and I are like brothers. With General Han's upright character, I naturally wouldn't be too bad. As the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together." Guxian nodded and smiled. That's true. Guxian took the silk book and carefully read it. He said, Zhang Jiao was really a genius in cultivation. He actually found a new path and comprehended the subtle connections between different types of spell symbols. He could infer many things from one just by listening to one. I'm not as good as him. After a pause, Guxian said, however, many of the words on this silk book are broken and strange. It seems to be incomplete. Is this the only page you found on Zhang Jiao's remains? Bai Xiaowen nodded. He thought to himself that it wasn't just this page that was found. It was only this page that was revealed by the rules of the spiritual realm. Guxian frowned and said, this humble Taoist should be able to slightly fill in the gaps. However, to restore it to the level described by Zhang Jiao, I'm afraid it's still not enough. Bai Xiaowen's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that the 3rd step of the awakening skill task was also fishy. If he could find professionals in the cultivation world to help him fill in the gaps, he should be able to complete the task. The only difference was the degree of completion. If he could find Nanhua Old Deity to help him fill in the gaps, the degree of completion could soar to 95% or even 100%, perfect. Guxian was a bit lacking, but he should be able to get a passing grade, right? Bai Xiaowen's thoughts turned. He smiled and said, Taoist priest, what Zhang Jiao learned was from the 3 scrolls of heavenly tomes, the Taiping Qi technique. If you read the 3 scrolls of heavenly tomes, you should be more confident in filling in the gaps, right? Guxian nodded and said, logically speaking, it should be so. However, this humble Taoist priest has not seen the heavenly tomes, so I don't dare to say. Bai Xiaowen smiled and said, I promise to study the heavenly tomes with you. Of course, I won't go back on my words. Taoist priest, please come to my study and read the heavenly tomes together. How about it? Guxian agreed readily. The 2 of them quickly arrived at the study of the provincial governor's office. Bai Xiaowen took out the 3 scrolls of heavenly tomes. He opened the top scroll and saw that the silk book was blank. He asked in confusion, why are there no words? Guxian smiled and said, skills are not easily taught. The heavenly tomes have no words to begin with. If you want to read the heavenly tomes, you must use the inner vision technique. Young master also cultivates Taoist magic. Have you not learned it before? Bai Xiaowen said honestly, no. Guxian suddenly said, it seems that young master only knows how to use Taoist magic, but not how to use it. This inner vision technique is not difficult. With young master's foundation, you can master it in less than 3 days. This humble Taoist is willing to teach young master. Bai Xiaowen felt comfortable. Master Gu was indeed Master Gu. It was a wise decision to trick him back. Guxian then passed the incantation of the inner vision technique to Bai Xiaowen. The inner vision technique was to close one's eyes and visualize one's spiritual power as a third eye and then extend it out. This is spiritual power manipulation, but it's more condensed. The third eye that is formed is a bit like the Buddha's heavenly eye. Bai Xiaowen muttered to himself as he followed the instructions. Spiritual power manipulation was something that any awakened who specialized in spiritual power could do. For example, spiritual scanning, spiritual sensing, and so on. However, these were all natural means and belonged to the unorthodox path. The Western path of magic had meditation, while the Eastern path had inner vision. In fact, they were all about the same principle. They were all systematic methods to train one's spiritual control ability. In fact, Bai Xiaowen already had a very good foundation for this. When he was in the dark tide plane, he had entered a mysterious state of meditation because he had been hungry for a week. In this state, the range of his mental scanning and sensing was greatly expanded. In fact, this was the Western meditation method. The inner vision technique taught by Guxian was the orthodox method of the Eastern path of Huaxia. It was similar to meditation, but each had its own emphasis. 8. You're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.